Hi, and welcome to the 85th TiddlyWiki Hangout. I'm Jeremy Ruston, the inventor of TiddlyWiki, and I'm joined today by, from left to right on my screen, Andreas. Andreas, hi, would you like to say hello, introduce yourself, say where you're from, and say something about your work with TiddlyWiki?
Yeah, I'm Andreas. I'm from Germany, and I am still, I think, a newcomer when it comes to TiddlyWiki. Well, at least by TiddlyWiki standards, I think. And I have been around for a little while and mainly experimenting with TiddlyWiki and see what I can come up with.
And Andreas is very modest. I believe you're responsible for twguides.org.
Yes.
So that's one of the things that's on my list to talk about today. And perhaps we'll ask Andreas to show us his latest bit of work, which is quite an exciting thing. Eric, hello. Would you like to say hello and introduce yourself in the usual way?
Hi, I'm Eric Schulman. I'm the creator of Tiddly Tools, the author of Inside TiddlyWiki, the missing manuals, and the manager of the TiddlyWiki Google groups.
And where are you from, Eric?
Oh, and I'm based in Silicon Valley in California, and it is 6 a.m. here, and I was up all night working on some TiddlyWiki stuff, so I'm probably going to just bow out after the greetings. So.
Meanwhile, I'm wagering that we'll hold Eric's interest and he'll still be with us, still wide awake in 2 hours' time, but let's see. Next, Matt. Hi, would you like to introduce yourself in the usual way?
Yes, how do you do? So I'm Matt from Stockholm, Sweden. And yeah, I'm a long-time Tiddly user, and I don't know what else to say. I hope today that we can talk a bit about an idea of mine.
I've got that on my list for today. Excellent. Glad you could make it, Matt. And Nick Spies. Good to see you again. Haven't seen you in Hangouts for a while. Hope you're doing well. Please introduce yourself in the usual way. Nick, your sound isn't coming through at the moment. We're hearing very low background noise, as if there's a volume control on 0 somewhere. No, I'm afraid. Nick, we'll come back to you when you get microphone problems sorted. I should have mentioned Andreas is joining us for his first Hangout, and our second guest, for whom this is also their first Hangout, is Pascal. Pascal Redoulier. I'm not sure if I pronounced your name correctly. Forgive my Anglo-centric pronunciation of everything. But Pascal, hello. Would you like to introduce yourself, say where you're from, and say something about your work with TiddlyWiki?
Hey, so my name is Pascal. I currently live in Burgundy, Chalon-sur-Saône. And I'm 50, and I've been using TiddlyWiki for about maybe 10 years, is that correct? And I recently, something like two years ago, I switched to the new version, TWcMatchTags 5, which I enjoy very, very much. I won't be able to actually to come up with anything but questions, really, because technically I'm not really up to par with most of you guys. What else? I mean, like I said, I'm in the nuclear business. I'm a quality engineer. And
so do you think does the single file, the fact that you can control the privacy of a TiddlyWiki document by controlling what happens to a single file, is that a useful property in that environment?
Yes, I actually I've been asking the reason why I've been using TiddlyWiki from the very beginning was that 10 years ago I was not able actually to have people install any kind of server for me for a wiki, and so I've been looking around, and TiddlyWiki looked like it was the correct answer to my request. The fact is, it's hard to share something with someone else, that someone else being able to change things and not actually disturbing what you've been doing at the same time. I found, I think, some kind of a plugin at that time that was able to say, not so much to allow people to share things at the same time, but just let the other person know that no, you cannot actually change anything because someone else is actually using the TiddlyWiki. But that was about it. I was actually pretty happy with it because the number of persons that I was able to actually talk into using the TiddlyWiki was very little, very small. And from the moment I changed to TiddlyWiki 5, I was then the only one using it. And from that moment on, I've been using it pretty much like a journal, like an agenda, and so as to keep tracks of what was my activity, and being able from then on to report every week, every month. But that's about it.
No, well, yes. I think these are the challenges that have cropped up from time to time in the discussions here. I think there's a few paradoxes in there, aren't there? And there's anyway, we'll maybe return to some of those questions, but before we move on, let me give Jed a chance to introduce himself. Jed, would you like to say hello and introduce yourself in the usual way?
Hi, I'm Jed. I live in the Southwest US. I make the wiki, reference wiki, and stuff with the wiki. Hi.
Great that you could join us, Jed. And Jed's going to be in Europe this summer, so I'm looking forward to meeting up with him for coffee somewhere in Europe over the summer. So today we've got quite a big list of things to discuss, so we'll move along quite swiftly. I noticed that Andreas has added a couple of questions in the Q&A panel, and so let's pick those questions up and then we'll work through the few items that I've got written down, if that's okay with everybody. So Andreas, I'm just about to read the question for you, but I don't know, maybe you can't see it anymore. It is easy to permanently crash a wiki when editing certain system tiddlers, e.g. the codemirror configuration tiddlers. Do you think it would be a good idea to include an emergency tiddler editor in the case that booting fails to correct things? Jolly interesting question, Andreas. My rough thought is that the way out of most disasters, if you've been able to save changes, so I guess this is specifically about the situation where you've made a change to TiddlyWiki, you've been able to save it to disk, but then when you reopen it, it's inoperative. And obviously it's very common because it's when you reopen it that plugins try and operate. So we do already have a safe mode that disables the loading of plugins. So the particular example that you mentioned there, Andreas, would, I think, you'd be able to disable codemirror and make the edits. Thinking about it while I'm speaking, I realize that safe mode is not very easy to find, and maybe we should have a link in control panel that says open this wiki in safe mode, which would be a link to the wiki with #safe, which, as I recall it, is the marker for kicking off safe mode. So I mean, Andreas is making a very specific suggestion, which is about an emergency tiddler editor. To the extent that that emergency tiddler editor wasn't able to work in the usual way of being rendered wiki text. So if we're imagining an editor that's kind of pure JavaScript, so to speak, on the one hand, I can completely see the value of that, and so it'd be kind of a useful thing to have in the ecosystem. On the other hand, I don't know, I mean, you can... One of the options in this situation is to go to the JavaScript console and to execute JavaScript commands to write to tiddlers. I think that doing that actually is very powerful. I'm sure you'll have seen there's been a few cases recently on the groups where people have asked to solve very specific automated problems. Can I do all of this to all of these tiddlers with a particular tag? And I came up with fragments of JavaScript that could be pasted into the console. We could make that much easier. We could make it so that when a user opens the developer console, that there's a nice friendly message explaining what you can do with a link to tiddlywiki.com, where we'd perhaps have a listing of useful fragments. So that's roughly my thought, Andreas, that we've got a couple of techniques already: safe mode, using the JavaScript console, and I'm not sure how much engineering it's worth to engineer another one. But as I say, I'm very interested in the class of things of which this is a specific one, which is to say, bits of TiddlyWiki's mechanism exposing a configuration or status information through the DOM directly that would normally be disabled, but which users could elect to show in order to kind of see under the hood. And an example would be, it's been very much on my mind, that when we use the plugin library, which, as you know, is a precursor to the type of federation we intend to do, the plugin library is actually an HTML file that's loaded in an iframe. And for debugging, if for nothing else, it would be jolly useful to be able to see that iframe. And of course, that iframe is an example of something that's already in the DOM, or already normally hidden. And so what I'm talking about, this ability to show, to expose this bottom part of the page, I guess it would be, with these under the hood dashboardy settings. And the advantage of that is that we could do things like, for instance, produce a display of the widget tree. And that's it's very hard to use the widget tree to produce a display of the widget tree, if you see what I mean. So yes. But Andreas, I've just droned on for ages about that. Did I correctly capture the problem that you were addressing and the merits of the idea?
Yes. I think I didn't know about the safe mode, and I think it solves most of the problems I described in the question.
Well, then a pull request that would be much appreciated is one that I suspect there's a few other places in the documentation where we should link to the safe mode documentation. So in the places that are talking about how to install and modify plugins, maybe there we should add some pointers.
Yeah, sounds good.
Andreas has a second question. Is it desirable that every widget, where it makes sense, has the option to trigger action widgets instead of throwing, say, a message? Candidates, keyboard, checkbox, maybe even tiddler. Andreas, yes, this is a really interesting question. There's a few places where, because of the way that TiddlyWiki has grown organically, where there are mechanisms that do almost the same thing, and these are the sorts of things that really I lose, well, not lose sleep about, but it's the sort of thing that gets me thinking about TiddlyWiki 10, put it that way. And you're right, the action message, sorry, the action mechanism and the message mechanism are sort of tantalizingly similar and yet completely different. Certainly in terms of the DOM, you might look at one of them as a message that's bubbling and one as a message that's captured, I think. Yes, so for the moment, obviously the advantage of messages is it works very well for things like navigation, for instance, where you've got a whole load of different widgets that might implicitly be generating a particular message. So action widgets in each case would involve a lot of wasteful duplication. So you could look at messages as a way of kind of grouping and sharing action widgets, which suggests that maybe things like the navigator widget should have action widgets on it. So the very short answer, because I think we've got quite a lot of other stuff to discuss, is that's a really open question. It's the sort of thing that I've made the point before that I hugely enjoy watching people do things that I hadn't anticipated with TiddlyWiki. And so questions like this, which is, we've got these two slightly similar mechanisms, can one be expressed as a special case of the other or the other way around? Those questions, I think, are most fruitfully resolved with a lot of input from a lot of people, and we've certainly, in fact, action widgets themselves, I think, stemmed out of some discussions with various other people. I mean, they were one of a number of ideas that have been percolating in my mind, but what actually prompted their implementation was a discussion. So I hope that is that a reasonable answer, Andreas?
Yes, thank you.
So now I'm going to just flick to the chat window to see if there's, okay, and I can see a quote from Eric: own it like a document, use it like a website, which I think we might see on every Hangout that Eric joins. So the first thing we were going to talk about was Matt's FastNewTiddler plugin. So I'm going to ask Matt to show you it, but just to introduce it, I think there's a couple of things I'd like to say. So Matt failed to come up with much when he was introducing himself, and I think maybe you said something about not being a developer. I'm not sure, Matt, did you? But one of many things that has marked out Matt's contribution is his ability to produce detailed, convincing, if that's the right word, mock-ups. Which I've found very often in my my professional life at work, that producing mock-ups that people can kind of see and believe in is an incredibly powerful thing to do, and so it proves in the TiddlyWiki community. I'm embarrassed by how many things that Matt has mocked up that we haven't implemented, but then again, I think that's making Matt's ability to mock things up get better and better, so that's good for the community. So with that introduction in mind, what this is an answer. Well, actually, I should now let Matt introduce it. But the problem that Matt's solving is, I think, delightfully one of the most central things about TiddlyWiki. How can you make it super quick to take a note? So with that, I'll hand over to you, Matt, assuming you're ready to screen share. If not, I can show it here.
I think I am. I will just have to go through the usual, the beginner stuff. Let's see which button is it. The
green one.
Green one, is it?
With an arrow.
Screen share. And let's see. Can you see this?
Yes, brilliant. I must say, I think one of the things that I thought was rather charming was you seemed a little bit surprised that it worked when you were presenting this to the group. I'm not sure if I read that entirely correctly. But that was very charming.
The thing is, it's based on, I don't know if it happens to you, but it happens to me that, I use the trial and error coding technique, and this means that every now and then there is a tiddler created that I didn't intend for it to be created. There's something like, what the hell is that name? Like this missing tiddlers, and it has a name like, I don't know, some section of a code phrase or something like that. And so I was thinking that, who knows, maybe I can use that for something. So I started playing around with bits and pieces, and it turned out into something that might just be usable. But I don't know how it works, really. Maybe you can tell me.
I think, again, this is a wonderful, this is something that's cropped up before with somebody else, Stephen Kimmel, who also, he said, I am not a developer. And then he described what he'd been doing. That was exactly how a developer would approach it. And as Jed is just saying in the sidebar, literally all developers completely rely on trial and error, and we are all winging it. And we all, I think that developers live in an amazing environment where basically we can make mistakes and the consequence is almost nothing. In most professional fields, if I was carving statues out of marble or something, wrong move and you've completely ruined the whole thing. Whereas with code, one wrong move, oh, roll back, and you're safe again. And of course, as a non-developer, using TiddlyWiki, you get the same advantage. But sorry, Matt, you're now surely ready to go.
Yes, yes. So maybe I put it up on TiddlySpot on FastNewTiddler.tiddlyspot.com. So maybe you'll want that page open because you can try it then parallel as I speak. And what you're met with there is yeah, the instructions on how to use it. But the crucial bit is in the sidebar. You can see my mouse.
Yes, we can see your mouse pointer as well.
Okay, so you just click this button, and you have this panel open up, which is an above story thing. So it's not really a tiddler. I don't.
And it's not in the open tab then in the sidebar.
No, exactly. You don't see it here. It's not part here because it's not a tiddler. And it's just a template where you type in stuff. You start with some title, and so far nothing actually is happening. But once you type into any of the other fields, like this one, let's say you tag it with tag A, that creates the actual tiddler, as you can see in the recent list here. Now, it says some title there.
What happens if you change the title to something else?
That creates, yeah, okay. So BBB, that erased, as you can see, the tag disappeared because now it's the
it's a different
beginning
tiddler.
of another tiddler. Exactly, but it's still not.
If you start deleting those B's one by one, at some point the tags will reappear when the title gets back to.
Exactly how it is. Yes. Yes.
Marvelous.
So now we're back in the tiddler that we just created 30 seconds ago. Okay, so there are a few issues. One of them is that there was an idea, I think it was from Dave Gifford, that he preferred the tag pill creation method. For some reason that I don't know, this happens. If I close it, by the way, then it gets closed and I can reopen it like this. But when there is a new, when there's nothing filled in, when nothing is created, this tag appears there for some reason.
Okay, so it looks like the current tiddler, because you're trying to set the current tiddler to the empty string, because that's what's in the text box at the top, and that's ignored, so the current tiddler stays as the tiddler that this whole thing is in, which of course that tiddler has the tag above story, because that's what makes it appear there.
That might be the explanation, but that's not what I thought actually. I thought, unless I just misunderstood what you were saying, but I think this is a result from like a general message in the system to tag whatever. I won't hypothesize because I'm not a coder.
No,
so
you can. I think you've got a sufficient reasoning framework to see exactly what's going on. There's a peculiarity of the way that the tag pill display works, where it is showing you the tag pills of the current tiddler instead of the tiddler with the title of the empty string. So the text of the tiddler that you're seeing is the text of the tiddler with the title of an empty string.
But might quite be it.
So I think the solution is likely to be a reveal widget that changes what you present depending on whether the title is blank or not. And then if the title's blank, maybe you'd hide the tags and body and display a message saying you need to specify a title. And then as soon as they did start typing a title, then that message would disappear and they would see the tags and body text field.
Okay, that could be it. Yeah,
so let's have a look at
the things. This is on this what I'm showing just now.
That's very interesting. I see.
Yes. Yeah, so that's the, I think the easiest actually for you guys who know how to read code, that you just go to the FastNewTiddler.tiddlyspot.com.
But in 2 years' time, when people are watching this in the future, then FastNewTiddler.tiddlyspot.com will be some new turbocharged thing, and it won't be the code.
Something else. Right. You're right, of course. Good point. So yeah, so here is anyway the only two necessary tiddlers so far at least, and that is the FastNewTiddler and the FastNewTiddler button. FastNewTiddler is the actual code, and FastNewTiddler button refers to this the icon up here, the button up there. So the FastNewTiddler code is this, and it's basically a table to show the fields. There's a bit of styling to get it to appear somewhat like the normal new Tiddler template. It should be further improved to make it very similar, in my opinion. And there is the field mangler thing. I don't quite know what a field mangler is, but I found this piece of code from Stefan Hradek, or Hradek. I don't know how to pronounce his name. But this is what says, I think it sends us a message, and with the parameter tags above story, and sets applies this to this very tiddler so that it appears as above story up here. So what you're seeing here is actually this tiddler here when the tags above story exists there. If I take it away and save, the above should disappear. Yes, it did. Here is instead the actual tiddler now that we just had open. Yes.
There is an issue with that technique, and it may just be worth talking through it because it's something that's cropped up a few times, and I don't know that I've ever explained it. But if you can put that back into edit mode, I could just talk you through what the issue is. So the code that you just highlighted with that field mangler widget, what it's doing is adding and removing the tag above story to this tiddler, to the tiddler that actually contain this code. The issue with that is that an obvious, I mean, people can already use what you've done, and that's amazing. You know, one of the things that's good about TiddlyWiki is it's this, once you put it on TiddlySpot, anybody can reach in and grab the tiddlers they're interested in, and they can try out exactly what you've got. But still, you may decide to make it into a plugin. One of the typical advantages, I mean, typically quoted advantages of a plugin is that it can be updated later through the upgrade process.
Yes.
In this case, one of the consequences of this way of working is that FastNewTiddler would become a shadow tiddler. But of course, as soon as this code is invoked that adds or removes the tag, it can only do that by overriding the tiddler with the shadow tiddler with a real tiddler that either has or has not got this above story tag. So a consequence of that is that subsequently to that, any subsequent update to the underlying shadow tiddler containing this FastNewTiddler mechanism wouldn't be visible to the user because they would have overridden the tiddler. So it's one of those. The technique that you're seeing there is a kind of this approach of packing state data. In this case, the state is whether or not the FastNewTiddler widget panel should be shown or not. We're combining the state with the actual mechanism, and since I've just talked you through a problem with so a preferred way of doing this would be to leave the above story tag on all the time and to use essentially a slider, a reveal widget, to hide or show the panel according to a configuration tiddler, which might be $:/FastNewTiddler/ status, and then either the text containing hide or show or something. So as I said, not to pointing that out feels like I'm diminishing your achievement, but
in no way,
it's intended to be helpful. And as I say, I think the big story here is again something we've talked about repeatedly. It's people who are not developers, but who still, such as yourself, have the right mindset to wrap themselves around TiddlyWiki, being able to not only adapt TiddlyWiki for themselves, but you've actually got under the skin of TiddlyWiki's fabric in order to do it in a way that means that you can share it with other people. And I believe that. So sorry, Eric?
No, I didn't. I just want to get into the queue.
Oh, into the queue. Okay. And to me, that's the magical thing about TiddlyWiki has always been the activity of the community that makes up what people pompously call the ecosystem. And as I say, the really unusual thing is for people who, such as yourself, who don't identify as developers, to still be part of that process is really amazing. So I couldn't be more pleased to see that. Hearty congratulations. I think you should make it a plugin. I think it's the sort of thing that should be available in the note-taking edition of TiddlyWiki.
Jeremy, I wanted to chime in on the specific issue of manipulating a tag in order to change the effect, because obviously the presence or absence of that tag, results in that being shown or hidden, as opposed to having the independent toggle of a state flag kept as a state tiddler somewhere, and then a reveal inside the that tiddler, which would be always marked as above story. I had, and you said, oh well, it's you're not a programmer, you did very well. I didn't. The thing is, I had the exact same problem. I was using it to toggle the style sheet tag on a bunch of read-only settings, so that I could turn on and off a bunch of, hide a bunch of things by toggling and I was bothered by the fact that it was modifying the tiddler all the time as I was toggling. And it occurred to me that, well, I have done other buttons that simply set state values and then had reveals elsewhere, and that I should actually do that instead. But my point is that the exact same issue came up, and obviously, I think most people would say that I'm a sophisticated software developer, and the tendency to say, oh, that's an easy way to do things. Actually, it is subtle, though, about the fact that you're modifying it in a way that prevents the shadows from coming through.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that I think is good is that the problem is kind of visible, if you see what I mean. That you can understand what's going on by poking at a TiddlyWiki and playing with it. It's part of this. Jeremy's professed benefit of TiddlyWiki is that despite what lots of people see as its great complexity, is the relative simplicity of its mechanisms. There's lots of different widgets, but there aren't very many mechanisms like widgets within TiddlyWiki. But I think we should keep moving because I'm aware of a huge stack of things we'd like to talk about. Sorry, you were going to say.
Yes. First of all, perhaps, I think I forgot really to say what it's for. Did I?
Yeah. We inferred it's for rapid note-taking.
Okay, right. Yeah, okay.
We got that from the
I guess people can try it out. Yeah.
But I think I did introduce it with that. But I think it's a very when I read people writing about things like Evernote, our commercial competitors, this time to first note, I think, is very important. And so, in fact, what you've done, I was going to say in the intro, is something that's been in my mind before in a slightly different form. The thing I'd thought about was having a command line at the top of the screen. I think we actually did touch on it at last week's Hangout. And one of the easy shortcuts would be like if you type space or something, it goes straight into new tiddler mode, and you can just type space, type the title of a tiddler, that kind of thing. And there would be, a more flexible variant of the same thing. But I think the key use case would be what you've done, the ability to enter a new tiddler quickly. But it would also be about doing bulk tag manipulations, all that kind of thing as well. So, thank you for that.
One more thing, sorry, can I just...
Yes, of course.
Sorry.
I'm so sorry, Matt.
Yeah.
I'm being very brusque. Do forgive me.
No, Jed has kindly promised to hang out a bit after this hangout, so I'm inviting anyone who is participating here to hang on, and we will talk a bit more about this and see what can be done to improve it and to make it more useful.
I saw your discussion of that, and in fact, I was going to suggest that we don't actually stop the Hangout recording, that we continue to record it. It only needs to be a few people to be interested in it for it to be worth it. I quite like the idea of a two-phase Hangout as well. Going into a workshop, that seems like quite a fun thing to do. Okay, so apologies for my brusqueness and all that. The next thing on my list is Eric's TiddlyWiki 5 extras, but he's not ready to show them to us. But he told us just before the Hangout was starting that some widgets and other bits and pieces that he's been writing for TiddlyWiki 5. I pointed out that I think it's quite exciting that Eric started TiddlyWiki 5 development.
I could show you stuff.
Well, in fact, I'm going to suggest that we. Well, shall we? What do you say, guys? Yes. All right. Go on then, Eric. I'm setting the timer for 5 minutes.
Let's see how we can do this best here. I do the share of the. And are we?
You're in.
Are we shared?
Yeah.
Alrighty then. Okay, so let me just close this up for a moment here. So this is inside TiddlyWiki, and if I go over here, we can see this button here. This is to unlock, and we have a little bit of a layout problem, so I'll toggle the layout. There we go. Okay, that's better. To unlock it. So here's the lock and unlock.
And that switches some read-only stuff off.
That switches some read-only. As a matter of fact, we can see here's the read-only style sheet, which is very simply, it's hiding a number of items, and it's adjusting some things, and it's also activating the display of something I call viewer tools. So I have author tools and viewer tools, and then the rest of these are just standard bits of TiddlyWiki that I'm hiding in read-only mode. And of course, it has a tag on it so that if I'm in read-only mode, we'll see it now has a tag shown. And if I go out of read-only mode, and so that's done with the toggle read-only, which is this little button. And the button looks like the following. And this is what we were just talking about with the tagging. Here's a field mangler wrapped around, and it says if now, first of all, I like to do this is just to focus the tiddler on what I'm looking at. Just wrap it in a tiddler macro. Everything inside here is now pointed at that read-only tiddler. And so I'm saying if the current tiddler is tagged with style sheet, then show this, otherwise show that. And it's got the lock and the unlock. But what it's doing is a set field. It's also toggling the sidebar open and closed, by the way. But it's doing a TM add tag or TM remove tag message, which results in this tiddler being modified when you toggle the read-only mode. But getting into the goodies that my limited 5 minutes here, we have a couple of filters. One of them is called the JList filter, and for example, you can currently do a filter on the story list because the story list has a list field, which is the names of all the tiddlers in the story in the current display order, top to bottom. But the history list gives you a different information. The history list is stored as a JSON tiddler, where there's a field called title in each object, and there's multiple JSON objects in the tiddler. And so, for example, if you'd like to extract just the title field from a set of JSON records, you can now use the JList filter, which takes a tiddler name and a JSON field, although it has the same syntax as a tiddler field would be. It's actually referencing a JSON field. And here's the actual extraction of it. But what this does is this allows me to then retrieve the history list. So, for example, if I go to the advanced search filter and I just enter in, I say, give me the JList of dollar, capitalization correct, $/HistoryList. And here we can see the actual contents of HistoryList, including I went into edit mode. I went to toggle read only. I went into edit mode. I left edit mode. So now the thing is, I don't want to have repeats in there, so I'd like to get the history list. And so I have another filter which I wrote called unique, which strips out the repeats. And so filters. I have 3 filters that I've written. The other one, the unique, the JList, and TagEx. TagEx allows you to write tag expressions like this using Booleans. And so in the same way you can write the tag filter as bracket tag bracket, then the tag text, and then closing brackets. This allows you, in place of the tag text, you can put a full tag expression. This is actually it's derived from the original MatchTags plugin I wrote for TiddlyWiki Classic.
So the guts is literally code lifted and shifted from your Tiddly tools.
This code from here down, the first thing it does is this is the manipulation of the input syntax to clean it up and normalize it, and build regular expression processing. And then this loop here, the difference is it's using the TiddlyWiki 5 filter mechanism to loop through and process the tiddlers that are in the list and then decide what to do with them. So this is that filter. But the one that someone else was interested in here was I wrote a widget, and it's called the ScrollHere widget. And if I go to, I'll just go to the home page here. We'll see for a second here. When I pop up this list, this is my own little table of contents mechanism, and I can navigate this list and say go down to something way down on the list like installation and setup, and we see it's navigated to that page. So that's fine. But now if I were to scroll up and navigate to, say, Introduction to TiddlyWiki, that's fine too. But now if I use the flip back button, notice what happens. The list actually goes back, but it's scrolled back down to where it belongs. Normally, there's nothing to tell it to do that. So what I did was I created a widget called ScrollHere, which very simply, I started off by taking the text widget. I figured a very simple widget that just outputs something very simple. And I saw how in the rendering I can get access to the actual DOM element here. And there's a function called scroll into view if needed. It's a browser, it's a native code in JavaScript browser support. And there's two versions, there's if needed and there's just scroll into view. And so all I'm doing is triggering this function to say wherever I am right now rendering, I want to scroll it into view, whatever that means. Whatever the browser's handling of scroll into view is, I'm going to trigger it. And then to use it, I have in the place in the tree where it's drawing this, which is in the tree template, I have logic which says whether or not to show, and it has a call to the ScrollHere widget. And so this is this is the logic of whether it's the selected item in the tree. So if it's the selected item, it invokes the ScrollHere widget, which so when that item is rendered, it will force the scroll position to bring that item into view.
Beautiful. And this is something I think that people have wanted in relation to the tabbed table of contents that's in the core.
Yes. Now I've done my own table of contents here, which is a floating table of contents. Yeah. So I can toggle this off, and I can.
You've done a lot to the look and feel as well.
Oh yeah, well, there are all sorts of things like when you mouse over, it floats. I added a nice little feature here, which is the favoriting. Whatever tiddler you happen to be looking at, you just go to that tiddler and you say, oh, you know what? I like that tiddler. I'll mark it as a favorite.
Where are your icons coming from? Are you using Font Awesome or something?
Oh, actually, I'm using, and I can show you where I'm using them from. It's I'm looking for the drop link. Where'd it go? Ah, there it is. It's a site called Flat Icon.
Okay.
And so, for example, if I want to find something that has to do with undo, it will give me a set of undos. And I was like, oh, maybe let's just pick one at random, this one here. I can look at it closely, or I can just select it and add it to my list of icons here, which I have a few in there already. So there's the ones I was using for the favorites. And at this point, I can, if I hit, say, SVG, it will now let me download that as a zip file of 4 SVG files. If I only have one image in here and I hit SVG, it just says, okay, fine, just download an SVG file. But I could also download it as icon, font, PNG, in all of these formats, the same image, or just hit all and get them in all formats. So this is, and these are Creative Commons open sourced.
It looks very similar to something that's quite well known called the Noun project, which is almost exactly the same sort of interface. I occasionally look at it for inspiration. So Eric, thank you very much. To say, I think the big story there is that Eric is writing add-ons for TiddlyWiki 5.
Well, and I'd like to just highlight that this particular corner icon, the toggle read only, offers you a couple of extra buttons up here. This one here is just a quick access to the recent changes list, because that's when you're editing, you really want to sort of get to that list, and you might not have the sidebar open, but you still have that button to give it as a pop-up. This is a quick access to the advanced search, which also doesn't disrupt your sidebar, so that you can just bring up the search and have it float there. And this button here is like the save button, but it also does a whole bunch of other resetting to the default states of things that I want to have, so that when I'm done editing, I can just hit this button. I don't have to get everything set before I hit save.
And do you still use it, having extended edit periods in Chrome with just occasional saves?
Oh, yes, actually. I edit for a while and then I hit save and I use the default download saver mechanism and it pops up I have it set to ask for my current directory, so it pops up and I simply double click on the current name. It says, you sure you want to replace? I say yes, and then I hit refresh to reload the whole page and I continue my cycle. When I'm really satisfied, I take that file that I've been writing to, which I've been overwriting, which is a little bit risky because I should be, overwriting to a backup, which I could do just by letting it do the parens1 type, the number collision that thing it does. But when I'm satisfied that I've got something decent, I grab a copy of it and I drop it into my Dropbox as a manual backup. And then when I'm really satisfied that it's working properly, I commit it to GitHub as a single file.
Sure.
Yeah, and so that's what we're seeing here is actually committed to GitHub. But what I want to say about this is that this cluster of buttons here and the mechanism is completely separate from the book that it's being used in. So this could be done as sort of a simple toggle read only for anybody. And this mechanism over here, I was trying to model it after mobile, where they have this sort of just a little button up in the corner, boop, and you get a whole bunch of controls popping out from the side. This is currently showing the table of contents of a book, but this panel here could be replaced with any sort of left sidebar, left pop-up sidebar. And not only does it toggle from this button here, but I have a hidden button sitting right back here.
Yeah, so you can do it from the whole side.
Anywhere to the left of the tiddler is a hot area to toggle this on and off. And as you can see, it floats, and it floats even if you're scrolling.
Yeah, on the main window.
Yeah. And then the other thing I have, of course, is and that's the last bit here, is the nav bar here, which provides you with, if you have a tiddler that is tagged, you can navigate through the entire tag set, flipping through. So as just as a really quick example, if I just go to, and then I'm done. If I go to images, I'll just go to the first one. There's appendix. Now, this is the first one, and it's tagged as image. But if I go to the next button, it's going to flip me through every single thing that's tagged as image.
And it does that for the first tag, I presume.
It does it for the first tag of the tiddler, is the one that it considers to be its group.
Awesome stuff. Well, as I say, I think it's really exciting to see you doing this stuff because of what it portends for the future. And I would echo.
By the way, here's an example of the use of the history list in a filter. As I navigate, I'm taking the history list. I'm filtering it for unique entries and then reverse order, in order to show you everything that you visited in the order you visited, regardless of the order in which they're displayed in the story list. This is the order in which they were visited since the beginning of the session.
Yeah, that's very cool.
And if you go back to one, it'll bubble to the top of the list because it shows you the most recent visit to it. So it's sort of a history. That sort of thing. Yes. And you're also using that to do this, which is a flip between two. And I'm done. Sorry.
Aaron, thank you. No, that was brilliant. I mean, I think lots of people will be very excited to see the beginning of this development and really look forward to, very aware that you're focusing on the presentation of the book at the moment, which obviously a lot of us who backed the book have an interest in. But also looking forward to the time when you're directing your work towards, other usages of TiddlyWiki.
I've already been encouraged by a friend sitting next to me occasionally to say, put out the empty book.
Yes, well, I think
the one that has all of these goodies but none of the content, so that he can start using it as his own book.
Right. Let's move on. We're going to just look quickly at a couple of things that are in 5.19 now. So 5.18 took a lot of took far too long before it was released. I'm trying with 5.19 to do two things differently. The first is to be able to continue to reissue 5.1.8 with new content. So I've done that. So you'll, for instance, notice on TiddlyWiki.com that now there's Matt's C also plugin and an update to the pointer to Andreas's TW guides. So I want to be able to continue to do that so we can keep the content on TiddlyWiki.com fresh. Want to make 5.19 have a few new features, but not too many, and trying to group them into sensible categories. So there's two, beyond bug fixes, there's two areas that I've started on so far. The first was prompted by somebody who posted to the group who's a visually impaired user. And what they wanted primarily was to be able to set TiddlyWiki to use a purely monochrome palette. And by monochrome, I think we might actually mean duotone, as in just not only a single color, but two shades of a single color. So there's buttons to switch in and try two new palettes that are based on a single old palette called Contrast. And as you can see, everything apart from links and a couple of minor things are purely black and white. There's a reversed out variant, but from what I've seen from my researchers on the web, it's light on the dark background that seems to be the most popular amongst visually impaired users. I've also added a couple of buttons so that it's easy to try out different colors as the two colors, if you see what I mean. And again, research on the net suggests that some users go for a sort of orangey green color as being gentler on the eyes, less glare than pure black and white. And there's also a button to revert to the default palette. So the motivation in doing this is the same as some of you will remember a few months ago. We did a bunch of work to make TiddlyWiki work better with screen readers, and it was prompted by somebody joining the community who wanted to engage on that problem, so it was perfect. Simon produced audio recordings of him using TiddlyWiki so that I could see exactly what the process was like for him, and that really helped me to make actually very modest improvements. And similarly here, doing this wasn't actually just a matter of creating the palettes. There were also a number of elements that for one reason or another weren't being covered by the palette. So I did maybe 8 minor modifications to make it possible to change the, I don't know, remember one of the hassles was making sure that all of the tag manager was the right way around, which actually it's not, looking at the headings. So very keen on doing these. I worked at Osmosoft with a work experience person who was visually impaired, and they used a laptop, 17-inch laptop, with the fonts dialed up to an enormous size. So you could basically see 3 lines of 12 characters. So one of the next moves I'd like to do, subject to the being users who are able to test it out, is a theme that modifies the font sizes and, if necessary, changes the layout to make it practical to use in that kind of configuration. So that was first new feature for 5.1.9. The next thing is something that I did. I'm very apt to do this, unfortunately. I'm sitting on the train quite a lot these days, and for me on the train there's no internet, and it's a really nice time to do some coding, to do some work. What I'm apt to do is do the easy 20% of a new feature on the train, and then condemn myself to spend the next couple of days finishing it off. In this case, the feature is the ability to open a tiddler in a new window, which I think has a couple of interesting use cases. It hasn't been discussed recently, but in the past, people have asked whether it would be possible to do this, and I've actually, I think, said no, because I didn't think that what I'm about to show you was actually possible. So in the pre-release, and you can see this at tiddlywiki.com/pre-release, there's a new Tiddler toolbar button to open Tiddler in new window, and for the moment it's set to be visible by default, but that is not the intent that it should be visible by default. When you click it, you get a new window, pop-up window, that its address bar says about blank, which is slightly annoying, and it contains at the moment just the text of the Tiddler in question, and as you can see with no margins, if I go and edit the underlying Tiddler, change the word features to have a few more Fs, you can see that the secondary window changes instantaneously as well. And if I try and open the same Tiddler in a new window, it'll just switch me back to the same window. If I try and open another Tiddler, I'll get another window. The underlying mechanism allows you to specify the size of the window, and there's just a default size at the moment. So as it says here, the sorts of things that I think it might be interesting for is for arranging reference tiddlers. So people with big screens, a quite interesting option is, rather than looking to TiddlyWiki to have lots of layout options for moving tiddlers around within the browser window, to instead use a modestly sized browser window and use the rest of your screen space for specific tiddlers that you need to be able to refer to. Now, at the moment, not everything works quite as it should. So if I click on a link here, for instance, yeah, it doesn't open in there. I hope that makes sense. There's some interesting things you can experiment with. You may have been ahead of me and wondering about this, but as you know, we can open the page template, and it normally fails in TiddlyWiki with a recursion error. But if we open the page template in a new window, look what you get. You get a second copy of the same TiddlyWiki. I'll quickly now close it here. And then there's things like, if I close that Tiddler in this TiddlyWiki window, you can see it also closed in that window. However, at this point, not everything is working exactly as I expected. Look, if I change this to search for Jeremy, that happens. But over here, right, so there's the, yes, that way around. So I do my search here, and it hasn't updated that window, and I don't know why. In fact, look, that window is even on a different tab. So there's some peculiarities that I need to dig into, because I'm literally in the middle of implementing this. So one-use reference windows for multiple, particularly if you've got multiple screens. Opening TiddlyWiki browser window to span two screens is clumsy and inefficient. It's quite useful for printing. So if I that was a stupid one to try and print. If I take hello there, open it in a new window, and try and print it, yeah, you can see you get a nice plain printout, print preview for that. And also presentations. So this will take a bit more work, but you could imagine, again, in a multi-screen setup, putting this window full screen on one monitor. And at the moment, I've got that visible, but I haven't really explored how we could lose that. And through that mechanism that you saw of being able to update that window remotely, one would interact with the notes window, so to speak, and each time, to change slides, for instance, you'd press a button on the main screen, and then it would automatically appear on the audience's view as well. So that was that. That's the open a new window feature.
A question.
Go for it.
Yes. Cool thing. What happens if you're peeking at one of those? If you're peeking through an iframe onto a Tiddler that has this feature, and you click the feature within that iframe, does it open a new? Yeah. What happens? Or maybe
Interesting.
something
I
to
think
try out.
it probably depends a bit on the browser's security rules. I would expect that if if an iframe tried to open a window in response to a user action, such as a click, I would expect it to work the same as if they'd tried to open the pop-up not from within an iframe, excuse me. But you can try it out. It's live now on tiddlywiki.com/pre-release. And as I said, there are some issues that I know about and don't understand, some issues that I know about and do understand, and I'll be working on it over the next couple of days just to get that all tickety-boo. You may remember it echoes a feature in Tiddly Desktop, that how Tiddly Desktop works, its entire user interface is displaying in a native window the content of individual tiddlers. So each window within Tiddly Desktop corresponds to a tiddler, and it is displaying that tiddler is what it means to display that window. And I think it was, I found that an amazingly powerful and interesting technique under Tiddly Desktop, and I'm rather delighted to find that we can do it in standalone TiddlyWiki too. Any other questions, comments about any of that? Then I wanted to just touch on a discussion topic, which is about the plugin library. So this was particularly prompted by what Andreas has done, and perhaps this is a good moment to talk about that. Andreas has produced a user interface for the process of creating plugins in the browser. So I think we touched on this last week, that one of the things that has been a surprise, a really interesting surprise, is to discover how much interest there is in being able to make plugins within the browser. We added support for it quite a long time ago, and at the time, because I thought that it was a sort of not terribly central requirement, we didn't put much effort into it. So basically, until Andreas's work, the user interface for creating plugins in the browser goes back to what I was saying before about the developer console. You open the JavaScript console and you type some magic incantations, and then your plugins get wrapped up. But since I've done that, there's been a year ago or something, it's clear that there's an awful lot of interest in being able to do the entire TiddlyWiki cycle, or all the activities associated with TiddlyWiki, just within the browser. What Andreas has done, is a very neat, well, it's two elements. He's added widgets and so on to allow the plugin packing process to be controlled, and he's added a user interface. And again, like Jed's recent work, it's knocked me out to see such a high quality user interface that feels, as a user just trying out Andreas's work, the user interface is very easy for me to figure out, very easy to parse, it looks great. And it's not that it was easy, because that sounds like I'm undermining Andreas's achievement. It's that I've now seen more people than just me doing it. And so it gives me increasing confidence that what we've got here truly is a platform for non-developers to build applications, which is the sort of way of describing TiddlyWiki that I kind of try and avoid normally, because it sort of feels like it puts TiddlyWiki in a very different camp, in a sort of developer-oriented camp. Anyway, so long introduction. Andreas, are you in a position to screen share to show us?
I think I could screen share a little bit.
Oh, brilliant. That would be great.
And it is correct that most of what I did is just add a graphical user interface. It is really just 80% graphical user interface and only a tiny bit of real logic behind it.
And how long did it take you to do, Andreas, would you say?
I think I used about one afternoon.
Great.
It wasn't very time consuming, because it really was just the user interface.
Well, I mean, all your TW guide stuff, I think, shares is very well presented like this. I mean, you must be experienced at creating this kind of stuff.
Well,
I mean, have you done anything like this apart from in TiddlyWiki? That's what I was clumsy trying to ask.
I am familiar with web development. So.
Yeah. But in a way, that's an even better vote of confidence, because as a web developer, you've got multiple ways to achieve things, including writing your own JavaScript. So a web developer choosing to use TiddlyWiki, I'll take as a vote of confidence.
Yeah, can you see my screen?
Yes, it's working.
Okay, so what you see here is a new tab in the control panel that my plugin adds, and it basically lists all the plugins you currently have installed. So it is in this view basically a copy of the other plugin tab that is available in the core. But instead of displaying the README when you expand a plugin, it displays a short or a very easy to use user interface for removing tiddlers from the plugin, for editing the metadata of the plugin. So I could change the version or change the list to incorporate another README. And I can also add tiddlers very easily, either through the default search, which searches all the system tiddlers, or through a filter search which just evaluates the filter. And I could, for example, change a tiddler, add a tiddler, and it would mark it as to be added when I package the plugin. So I have in my import bucket a couple of tiddlers I wanted to import to show you how I would add these to the codemirror plugin, because in the sidebar here, which I have a small editor in, you can see that the scroll bar in here doesn't look very nice because it's the native scroll bar of Firefox, and codemirror has a nice plugin, and it is thankfully very easy to add it to the normal core codemirror plugin. So I can just change the version so it doesn't collide. Oh, before I do that, I should back up. So while using this thing, I noticed that it might be good to have a backup capability, so that you don't destroy the plugin and it backs it up. So if you have made a mistake, you can go back and correct that mistake. So that's a neat little thing that I added just recently. And oh, I should probably import these. So it's basically just I downloaded codemirror and I dragged all the files that I wanted from the add-on in here, and I previously added a couple tags and a couple fields that were needed. But I can now go here and choose the plugins I want, which is the simple scrollbar plugin for codemirror, which I want to add. And also you can see that I overwrote the shadow tiddlers for the codemirror base, because in the same turn I want to update codemirror. So I don't have to add it here, even though the tiddlers show up, but it will automatically update the shadow tiddlers. Yeah, so I think that's all. And I can click repackage plugin, and it just did that. And it is a good idea to refresh the browser after repackaging. And once I've done that, you can see that the scroll bar has been added to the shadow list here. So it is within the plugin. It is packaged in the codemirror plugin, and the version of the codemirror plugin is also yet 5.1.8 with minus tinker after it. So if I want to edit now the codemirror configuration, and I go ahead and add my plugin to the list here. And yeah, it needs a scroll bar style set, which I'm gonna set to simple. And maybe. And I reload it, and when I just open a another tiddler in here which actually is long enough to produce a scrollbar. You can see that now the native scrollbar is gone, and I have a very tiny scrollbar that's much easier on the eyes than the native one.
Andreas, I really love the edit sidebar. I've, funnily enough, done something very similar recently. I've been working in a TiddlyWiki. This is, so using it as a notebook, not doing development, where I'm summarizing a whole load of tiddlers into one tiddler. The tiddler I'm summarizing into, I have as a sidebar tab, so that I can do basically the same thing as you've got going here. But this is obviously massively more comprehensive. Is this available as a plugin as well?
Not yet. I'm still working on it. It is intended as a live coding editor, so that I can change style sheets and HTML and the tiddler, while it being also open on the other side of this edit window, so I can make a change and preview the change in real time. And obviously that would work with HTML and CSS and all that. But I did also add Matt's FastNewTiddler capabilities, so I can make a new tiddler, and it would do the same. Also added over here.
Okay.
But I like the mechanics, so I just added it.
That's really cool. Well, that I think takes what I was saying before about the power of the community and doubles it or multiplies it by itself. Because I think I've mentioned this before, this idea of the process that makes a diverse and rich ecosystem like this is people in the community copying, modifying, and sharing each other's ideas. So to see, especially in the space of 48 hours, to see something being done, in this case by Matt, and then built on by somebody else, you get even further away from what any of us could do as individuals, and makes it even more satisfying to be part of this group.
Yes.
Can I add and ask something? Andreas, first of all, fantastic. I have personally felt a great need for the possibility to make plugins. I mean, it's been totally off my competence so far, but now thanks to you, thank you very much. Jeremy, this is a perfect example of what I would call an infrastructure project. In other words, something that helps community members to make other things for other community members. In my opinion, this should be part of core because of that, with that reasoning.
You've now very neatly taken me to the next part of the discussion. But before we move on to that, I want to make sure that everybody's had a chance to let what Andreas has done sink in. Any more thoughts or comments? Otherwise, I'm going to take Matt's question. So, a hearty congratulations, Andreas. Great to see you on a Hangout, and really great to see you arrive with highly impressive new work. And I think Matt speaks for a lot of people when expressing excitement when we see things with that degree of polish. And also, of course, it's I think you've very thoughtfully covered some important omissions in TiddlyWiki, if I can put it that way. So the question is about the plugin library. So all the stuff we said before, we need plugins. That's one of the things that makes one of the mechanisms that makes the TiddlyWiki community diverse and interesting. Now the problem we have at the moment is that the plugin library only has plugins in it that are published by TiddlyWiki. Now, we've got slightly confused nomenclature here, but in TiddlyWiki, let's put it that there's two ideas of the core. There's a very strict technical idea of the core, which is that there's a plugin called $:/core, and it contains the TiddlyWiki core code. And a lot of the time when we're talking about the core, that's what we're talking about. When we particularly when we talk about the size of the core, which is occasionally a concern. It's really the size of that plugin we're talking about. But then the second boundary that we can draw is the boundary around those things that are in the TiddlyWiki repository. So that includes the core TiddlyWiki plugins, the core TiddlyWiki plugins, the official TiddlyWiki plugins is what I've sometimes called them. So that's things like the codemirror plugin and so on that Andreas was just using. Oh, I've just pulled my network cable out, but it seems like I'm still working on Wi-Fi. That's encouraging. Can you still hear me? Yes, you must be able to. Okay, network cable is now back in.
It's like magic.
It is magic how it seamlessly crosses over. I mean, I string a network cable around the house for these Hangouts just to make sure I'm not reliant upon the Wi-Fi, but it is encouraging that the Wi-Fi does actually work. So apologies, I was in a very confused way. Let me turn the microphone on. I was first pointing at a confusion session by the confusion is what constitutes the core, or is it those things in the TiddlyWiki repo, including plugins like the codemirror plugin. Now, where we want to get to is for plugins like Andreas's to be listed in the main TiddlyWiki plugin library so that it's super easy for users to install those plugins. Now, back at the beginning of TiddlyWiki 5, I'd anticipated that in that situation, Andreas would move the source code of his plugin into the TiddlyWiki 5 repo. The reason why I thought that is partly because I didn't properly understand GitHub at the time, but partly the problem that I was trying to solve was I wanted this idea that things that were in the TiddlyWiki official plugin library were let's say audited, so at least that I knew what was, I mean not just me, but people in the project knew what was in the plugin library, that we could inspect the source code and make sure that plugins in the library do what they say they're going to do. So there's the opportunity to have a kind of a review process. So the problem that we're trying to solve there is, well, we're trying to solve two problems there. One is in TiddlyWiki Classic, the plugins were all over the world on different websites, so it was a great pain to find them. So we're trying to solve that problem by putting everything together into the plugin library. I'm also interested in trying to solve the quality problem. So part of the quality problem we can solve with the plugin library anyway by kicking things out if we find out later that they're of insufficiently high quality. And then we can make the upgrade process delete them. I mean, that sounds a bit mean. I'm not sure if we'd do that, but the problem, as I say, is that my way of thinking about GitHub was completely flawed. That it's really apparent that what a developer like Andreas, I think, but just about to speak for you, Andreas, but I think what a developer wants is to be able to maintain their plugin development in their own GitHub repo, to be able to declare releases of their plugin whenever they like, and for those new releases to immediately hit the plugin library without having to wait for the next major TiddlyWiki release. So to do some of those things implies building the plugin library differently and so on. But really, I think in figuring this out, we've got to start with the plugin developers. So Andreas, I'd like to hand over to you, really, that I want to confirm, if that's the right word, that I think a sort of baseline way of working would be for you to register a repo as containing a plugin, for the source code of that plugin to be under your own control, for you to make releases using the GitHub release mechanism, because that's the standard way that you say this is 5.1.8, etc. And for there to be some process whereby you declaring a new release of the plugin causes it to automatically appear in the TiddlyWiki plugin library. Would the process I've outlined there match your current way of working?
I think it does, yes. I think the opportunity to maintain the to release new features and fix bugs independent of TiddlyWiki's release cycle is what is really important for plugin developers.
Yeah, I think so too. And you may have seen that there's a the plugin library is versioned. There's a the folder for each version number. So you can do things like publish a different version of your plugin for different versions of TiddlyWiki. So I think for me, one of the things I'd like to avoid is a mechanism that's like npm, where any developer can take a JSON file or a TIDD file of a plugin and just upload it and it appears. And the reason I don't like that is I think it's reasonable for anybody who's looking at a plugin in the library to be able to see the source code on GitHub. And of course, very cautious people would possibly want to pick the code up out of GitHub themselves and do their own things with it. So what I'm thinking is that we are looking at a mechanism that is GitHub specific, basically. That would, because things like releases, for instance, they're not on other Bitbucket may well have a clone of releases, but many of the features that I've just mentioned, what I mean is they're part of GitHub and not part of Git. So doing that implies a process. Andreas publishes a new version of the plugin, of his plugin. He needs to somehow trigger the production of a new version of the plugin library. And that, of course, is the tricky thing. That at the moment, that's done by waking up Jeremy, and Jeremy runs a batch file, making it so that, and the alternatives are either that we enable other people to run that batch file. The disadvantage of that is that those other people need the same permissions that I have on GitHub, which is to say permissions to obliterate TiddlyWiki.com, and we don't necessarily want to give, nor do most people want to receive, permissions that are broader than what they need, if you see what I mean. The other alternative is to have a server somewhere that has the same access rights as Jeremy, and so is able to perform the publishing tasks that Jeremy performs. Now, historically, we've shied away from having any TiddlyWiki servers. So sorry, I phrased that really badly. TiddlyWiki.com is a static service, and that's tremendously powerful. It means that it never crashes. I can mess up DNS and so on, but basically it's always there. And I, for a long time, wanted to avoid the situation where something needs to be running in the clouds in order for TiddlyWiki.com to work, just because that's an enormous amount more administration to support. But what we're talking about here is a long-running process in the cloud that is used by administrators, or members of the community, such as Andreas, people who have a relationship with the community and therefore can take the necessary keys, the necessary permissions to do that. So I think that's what we need to do, is to figure out, therefore that probably means figuring out one or more of the online services that lets you run Node apps in the cloud, and there's many of them. Heroku being the famous one from a few years ago, and we need to pick up on some work that has already been done that you may have seen on how to run TiddlyWiki in those kinds of environments. Here, we wouldn't actually necessarily be running TiddlyWiki in the case of TiddlyWiki as a server. We want to be able to trigger a command line process. We want basically a number of people to be able to trigger a command line process within a virtual machine that has certain permissions. So that's a bit of background exploration, and I don't know if any, Andreas, Jed, any of you developer-y types have any of that kind of experience. And of course, that would be incredibly useful. In the meantime, I do wonder whether we should explore just very manual ways of getting this done. As I said before, I've at the moment carefully retained the ability to publish TiddlyWiki 5.1.8 independently of the under development 5.1.9. With a little bit of rejigging, we can make it so that we can reissue the current plugin library, i.e. the 5.1.8 plugin library, and say use manual processing where Jeremy runs a batch file. So I think that would be my. I promised to create a ticket for this, and I haven't. But I think that would be my approach: is to first engineer a manual process where Jeremy runs a batch file, and then a sort of phase 2 is running it in the cloud. And by phase 2, then Andreas is able to publish a new version of a plugin without Jeremy's intervention, but will use Jeremy's intervention to start with. And then what I hope we'll get to is the point where the plugin library has dozens upon dozens of plugins, and we'll be getting pull requests about can we divide the plugin library into sections and all that stuff that we'll need to think about when there's more than the 18 plugins there are today.
Jeremy?
Sorry.
As an end user, my point, I'm using the terminology in the wrong way when I say core plugin for sure. I'm using it in the wrong way. But my point was that I think that the feature to be able to create plugins should be part of the default TiddlyWiki that users download, the empty file. Maybe not a minimum file, but the empty that you get.
Okay, why do you think that? Why do you think it should be in the core and not in an optional plugin?
Because when you should get exposed to this as soon as possible and realize that, oh, this is something that I can do straight away. It's really easy, because that would encourage people to do it more, I think, instead of, as what you're talking about then, would be that, okay, it's something that I have to know about, that I have to go someplace to get it and download it, and then to get it from there. But I think it's something that should be really, really, really super easy, because it's part of something that in turn can stimulate people to do more contributions.
Anybody else want to comment on what Matt said before I do? Okay, so as it happens, Matt, I disagree. So from my point of view, a big challenge is keeping the core lean. And that's not just a matter of me resisting other people wanting to add things to it, it's a matter of resisting myself wanting to add things to it. And there are profound disadvantages in the core plugin getting too big. And we've talked in Hangouts before about minification and so on that we could do to minimize some of that. But there's no question that the big problem is that if one says yes to putting something in the core, very difficult to turn back on that. If you say yes, there's a saying in open source, if you say yes, you're saying yes forever. If you say no, it's provisional. So that is the background to this, and why it should always, to all of us, including myself, feel like an uphill struggle to get things into the core. And I think we all benefit from a minimal core. But you mentioned how difficult it is to find things out. So the reason you were citing for this thing being in the core is that it is important that people know about it. And I think that's a really common point, that lots of things actually are in the core because they're important. And so we had to qualify that importance. What I tend to think about things that are important to support what I talked about before. I think there's a kind of core minimum functionality of TiddlyWiki that should be available to people without them knowing about filters or widgets or anything. And that's just to maintain a stack of index cards, to have links between them, to keep track of missing and orphans and so on. So when I think of important in terms of the core, I'm often thinking, at least starting by thinking about them. But then there's many points where the determination of whether something should go into the core is entirely technical. There are boring, low-level technical reasons why it makes sense or why it doesn't make sense. But here, this thing about finding stuff, what I'm envisaging is that we make the plugin library at the moment people are experiencing the plugin library by visiting, by opening up control panel. But imagine if the plugin library was also a website. So you could just go to plugins.tiddlywiki.com in any old browser, and imagine it being a bit more like the Apple App Store with colorful little bitmaps, little screenshots. Can have movies. If Andreas can be bothered to make a YouTube screencast of his plugin, we can put the video there. If there are people who are prepared to do the curation, we can have we can maintain that as a lively, frequently changing front page. When it's Christmas time, point to the Christmas plugins that add snowflakes to your wiki, and so on. So I'm imagining that, in fact, in the future, the plugin library might be the first place that people go to find stuff. So both in the sense of, I'd like to be able to do such and such, I don't know how to do it, I'll go and search for it in the plugin library to see if there's a plugin to do it. And I'm bored, I'm going to poke around in the plugin library and see if anything new and exciting has come out. So for me, the solution to the problem is to make the plugin library exciting to use and easy to find. Sorry, Matt, once again, I kept talking after you. Oh, no, Eric. Eric, go for it.
Yeah, no, I'd like to just chime in. Initially, I thought Matt's suggestion made some sense. I thought, oh, yes, you want to make sure people have a way to share their tiddlers, and that the plugin packager, plugin manager would be the way to do that. But then I thought, there are already a number of different ways to share. If you're just using TiddlyWiki to create tiddlers for content, there's a number of different ways to share it. You can share the whole file. If you're running under Node.js, there's a ways to share just the tiddler files. There's exporting to JSON and being able to do that. The thing about the plugin bundle or the plugin packaging is that it represents not merely a desire to share tiddlers, but an intention to support them as a distributed package that is being released into the plugin environment, the plugin library, etc. And so it's more than merely just, oh, this is a good way that people should know they can share their tiddlers. This is actually something that requires people to say, I'm going to make a commitment to sharing these tiddlers as a set on a longer term basis. I better get the tool that lets me publish a plugin. And so there's the act of going to get the tool represents the act of deciding to make a commitment to actually publishing a set of tiddlers as opposed to simply sharing them. There's many ways you can share them without having to have the publisher, the plugin packager built in.
So I think that's a vote for a recognition that creating a plugin, even if we make the user interface for it easy, is a conceptually complicated thing, and therefore it's not a mainstream thing, and therefore it should be in a plugin. I would also throw in that I think people who are making plugins, they probably in a general way have different needs for TiddlyWiki. I think there are other modifications that one might want to make for somebody who's in that situation. And I don't think that we in any sense want to optimize the core TiddlyWiki product for people creating plugins, because as I say, it being cognitively quite a heavyweight thing to do in order for...
However, I think we left out an intermediate, which is the difference between this should be in the core, and yes, it should be done as a plugin. But the issue is, should this be a plugin that's part of the sort of standard distribution? That there could be, it's not implemented as part of the core, but are there, for instance, plugins that?
I think there are certain plugins that, if they're going to exist, they're so tightly bound to the core that they should be TiddlyWiki ones, by which I mean they should be called $/plugins TiddlyWiki / something or other. That's not the case for all of them, so I really like the idea that it should be $/plugins / TiddlyTools or / Andreas or what have you, because I think it's important that people should get their brownie points, their recognition for having created these things. But I think some plugins we might regard as being, and maybe the work that Andreas has done here is a good example as being sufficiently core-like that it's worth keeping it as, let's call them core plugins. So these plugins that are in the plugin library under the TiddlyWiki publisher label. And the reason, I guess, would be something about it being it is an optional feature of TiddlyWiki, and it's designed as an integral part of TiddlyWiki, perhaps. I mean, these are very subjective matters. But anyway, I guess
well,
to summarize,
but even then, I think that that an externally created plugin, someone out in the world says, "I have an idea," and they create from that idea a plugin, and then they want to publish that plugin, so they share it informally, and then they decide they want to add it to the plugin library, the sort of the whitelisted but sort of just broad public, and so it's there, and then a lot of people say, oh, this is a very good plugin, so maybe then it gets promoted to the standard distro of plugins, that the short list of good plugins to get that you can get with one click, and then at some point someone might say, you know what, there's all sorts of reasons why this now should be in the core because it's such a universal function now. So I think that things can migrate through these different phases of how much corification they've undergone, and I think that the idea of having sort of a special sort of, like I said, short list of plugins which are not part of the core but which are sort of, well, yes, everyone's going to want to have these, but you can strip these out without any harm, kind of thing.
Yeah, no, I think you're right, and a point that we've discussed before is how plugins have the freedom to change in a way that the core doesn't. So there's many, as you say, many different positions that a plugin can adopt, from being distributed on all the things we talked about, being part of the repo, being published under the name TiddlyWiki, etc. And they have different properties in several dimensions. One of them is trust. You can, in some sense, you need to trust the core in order to use TiddlyWiki at all, and yet you also see people making a conscious effort not to use third-party plugins, and I think they are motivated by the desire to keep the number of moving parts low to reduce the risk, the risk that inevitably accompanies frenzied configuration and customization. So yes, I think this is all stuff that we need to evolve as a community. I'd separate out, I think, that's the two layers. There's the layer that we've just been talking about, which is how we label plugins, how we distribute them, and those things are about policies that we adopt in the group. And there's also mechanisms, and my mind at the moment is very focused on the mechanisms that we're lacking for doing some important parts of this. Pascal, you've got your hand up very politely.
Yeah, I was just asking. I was just wondering whether it wasn't already the case that because we have actually, whenever we want to download TiddlyWiki, we have the two versions, the empty one and the full one. So maybe I didn't understand exactly what the empty and the full one versions meant. I thought that, and when I followed your conversation, I thought that the empty one was the one with the core plugins, the necessary ones, and the full version was the one with all the plugins that had been developed so far. So maybe I was wrong.
No, that's completely correct. So the distinction is that the confusion is the word core, but there's only a single core plugin. So there's the only plugin that is necessary for TiddlyWiki to operate is the one called $:/core. Without the hello.
Yes, I was thinking you could even split that into, if you really wanted to, you could split out the core UI components separate from the core functionality.
What there is at the moment. So what there is at the moment is the core plugin. The theme plugins, without them, you don't get any CSS, but TiddlyWiki does work. So that's what's in empty.html, is that minimal set of those plugins. The full .html edition, which I've added recently, exactly as you say, is literally every plugin, and it's not intended to be used as a starting point by people because it's very heavyweight to have every plugin in every language. It's more that I've found it's quite useful for demonstration purposes. So what we do intend to do, and it's I think the next wave after getting some of the plugins from the community into the library, is getting some of the editions of TiddlyWiki onto tiddlywiki.com. So this is the idea that we've had for a while, that you should, when you go to tiddlywiki.com to use TiddlyWiki, you should be offered a menu of starting points, and empty TiddlyWiki would be one of them, but there would also be a starting point for student notes, a starting point for bookmarking, etc., to-do lists, all the things that we've identified. And the hope is that those additions would make TiddlyWiki easier for beginners, that there shouldn't be a massive amount of overhead, because those additions are just an empty TiddlyWiki with some plugins and perhaps a couple of documentation tiddlers. And something that I've noticed in the past is that, and again we've talked about some previous Hangouts, that TiddlyWiki out of the box can be disorientating for people because it is so general purpose. So that makes it very unspecific. We, in some sense, people who love TiddlyWiki, have some facility for manipulating abstract concepts, and it's not shared by everybody, So I found that just changing the language that is used in an edition of TiddlyWiki, not necessarily adding any plugins, just changing the language, can transform it and make it usable by a set of users. So you think about people in nursing, say, taking nursing notes, something like that. I suspect the requirement is pretty, type some notes into a box, press OK, search for them later. Very simple requirements, but needs to be presented in a way that meets the expectations of that group of users. So this is step one. We start to get this amazing profusion of plugins and add-ons that we've already got for TiddlyWiki, start to pull them together into the plugin library, start to encourage people to use those plugins to create editions of TiddlyWiki for specific purposes. And obviously, hopefully the barriers to contribution for an edition should be very, very low. I mean, my hope is that literally somebody who does archery can, in an afternoon, create an archery TiddlyWiki and relatively quickly contribute it. And certainly I take contributions of translations by people just posting the translations to TiddlySpot. That's the sort of thing that we'd be able to do very easily for contributions of editions. Right. I then wanted to...
Can I ask?
Please do, sorry.
Yes. Could you give some words on the difference between a plugin and or between the tool that Andreas has? I didn't hear you, sorry.
Between a plugin and a JSON file of tiddlers.
Yes, between what Andreas has done and between exporting a bunch of tiddlers in one bunch. Yes.
Okay.
Oh, so I could speak to that actually, because I've been thinking about that. The old school, the JSON tiddlers are like the old Pure Store file. It's just a bunch of tiddlers that can be moved about as a file. The management of it and knowing what's in it and keeping track. And so when you drop them into another TiddlyWiki, they're just tiddlers that have been dropped in. But with the plugin mechanism, it's got more control. There's a sort of a plugin manager that can look at and realize which things should or shouldn't be allowed. It also, a plugin delivers its payload as a set of shadows, so that if you drop in a JSON file, those tiddlers are just regular tiddlers. They're there. And if you want to upgrade them, you just drop on top of them. But if you're dropping in a plugin, then when it unloads its payload at startup time, it's delivering them as shadow tiddlers, which means that you can then create overrides of them. And when you want to get an update to the plugin, it's going to update the shadows behind, and so you're not going to be, so you can update the plugin without losing your customization layer. It follows the whole plugin storyline. So there's a lot of advantage to it, but it means that it's a more constrained, more managed kind of adding of tiddlers.
That'll do. I mean, I guess a clarification is that a JSON file of tiddlers, a JSON file with 3 tiddlers in it, if you drag that JSON file into a TiddlyWiki, the result is exactly the same as if you dragged 3 separate .tid files. So they, as Eric says, they would be imported as entirely separate tiddlers. So you can think of a JSON file as a convenient way of packaging a bunch of .tid files together so that you can move a bunch of tiddlers around in one go. And as Eric says, a plugin is a very different thing. It's an attempt to make a tiddler that contains other tiddlers. And the reason why we do that is so that all of the tools we have for manipulating tiddlers can be used to manipulate groups of tiddlers. And exactly as Eric said, that gives us the advantage of being able to upgrade them in the field, for instance. So I think we pretty much covered it. That if what you want to distribute is tiddlers,
it also
let me finish the sentence, Eric. If what you want to distribute is tiddlers, then use a JSON file. If you want to distribute a bunch of tiddlers and for people to be able to override them and then revert to them, in other words, have the shadow tiddler behavior, or if you want to be able to do updates in the field via the upgrade mechanism, then you should use a plugin. So in practice, a lot of the stuff that we do as a group, that's kind of experimentation, sharing tweaks and ideas, where we're sharing stuff with each other, I think JSON files often win. Much simpler to create, much simpler to deal with. Where we're creating stuff for other people, so where we're creating stuff for other users who aren't TiddlyWiki cognoscenti like ourselves, then a plugin is intended to be the best solution in that case. And maybe that's the distinction. So I think we should all be feeling we're knitted together as part of a community that shares stuff, and I think for that, to get the most fun out of that, we need to remove the friction for sharing. And very often, in the first instance, making something into a plugin is a bit of friction. But then, we look at what Andreas has done, and of course, it makes producing a plugin so simple that maybe people will start figuring that even really trivial things are best done as a plugin. I think a plugin that consists of a single style sheet tweak is a very useful thing because it gives end users a very nice, consistent interface for how they acquire that functionality, how they enable and disable it, how they get rid of it when they no longer need it. It's just nice. Go to a simple place, the plugins tab in the control panel to do that. I say there is a case for very trivial plugins being useful. If that's true, then the kind of simple tweaks that we share on a regular basis, maybe we will end up sharing them as plugins.
I wanted to add that one of the things that I think is the most intriguing part about the plugin mechanism, other than it being sort of a nice sort of simple click to deliver kind of thing, is the ability to add constraints to what gets done when a plugin is imported, when you bring a plugin in. The ability to recognize version differences, to be able to say that this is something that would possibly cause harm and therefore needs to be sandboxed.
Yeah.
That's the kind of thing where moving tiddlers around by dragging them and dropping JSON or just individual tiddlers doesn't give you any of that sort of double-checking, safeguarding against corrupting your environment. Whereas the plugin mechanism, everything in it can be constrained to follow the rules and to give you are you sures and sandboxing of potential danger which is a very important part of actually distributing, publishing your tiddlers as plugins, as opposed to simply sharing them as, here you go, here's a bunch of tiddlers, do what you will with them. If you want to say, no, this is something that it has constraints on what is the appropriate way to share it. And that's what the mechanism provides, is the ability to put those constraints in.
We might call it management, that it allows us to manage these bundles of tiddlers, which I think goes back to what I was saying about how by making a bunch of tiddlers into a single tiddler, we're able to reuse the facilities that we already have for managing and manipulating single tiddlers. So for me, when I came up with this plugin implementation, and so the requirements I was looking at was, I knew that the shadow tiddler mechanism worked really well in TiddlyWiki Classic, and I knew roughly what I wanted the plugins to be able to do. But what I ended up with, I felt, was one of the dimensions in which TiddlyWiki is delightfully recursive, in which this way in which we twist things to reuse the same mechanisms, the way that a plugin is a tiddler, this recursive relationship. So it's one of the things I really like about TiddlyWiki's architecture. And as I say, I think it's proved more popular than I expected, I guess I could say. Anything else for any of those? Otherwise, I was just going to take a couple of questions that have popped up in the sidebar whilst we've been talking. But any comments from anybody? So there was a comment from Pascal. Will there be anything related to mobile? And Pascal, I'm not sure if you were talking about TiddlyWiki or something specific there. It might be Jed's mobile theme. So actually, Jed, it'd be quite cool for you to show us. Pascal, go on, please
Yes.
clarify what you were asking.
Maybe you have read about that Google upgrading,
Yes.
Google sort of deciding that the rank of a website would be based on its ability to be compatible with mobile devices, such as tablets and smartphones.
And so one of the good things is that TiddlyWiki passes that test. TiddlyWiki is classified by Google as being mobile friendly. So the criteria that Google are using are somewhat technical. We're, I think, really the beneficiary of the fact that so many mainstream websites have bonkersly complicated mobile versions. So there's a site, quartz.com and vice.com, which occasionally I end up following links to. And they're multi-megabyte JavaScript monsters that make TiddlyWiki look positively benign. So I think what I'm saying is that a TiddlyWiki style application with lots of JavaScript is no longer considered incompatible with mobile. I think the sorts of things they're looking at is the fact that TiddlyWiki now has responsive, what do you call things, media queries and style sheets. And the HTML layout tries to use the right HTML5 elements. So for all of those reasons, Google gives us a tick, and that's great news that people with TiddlyWikis won't be punished by Google for not being mobile friendly. However, despite Google giving us a tick, the mobile experience of TiddlyWiki is still far too poor. Jed has been paying attention to it. Jed, do you want to screen share and show us what you the state that you're in at the moment?
I'd like to toss in a bit one more thing about mobile. In the header of TiddlyWiki, there's a flag. It's Apple mobile web app enabled or something of that sort. It's a single meta tag. And apparently, the presence of that meta tag causes iPads and Androids running Chrome to be able to recognize that the app can be used, it can be used as a standalone without the rest of the browser, toolbar and bookmarks and such. And so if you go to tiddlywiki.com, on a tablet in your Chrome browser under Android, we'll say, and you bookmark it by add to home screen, the icon that comes up is not merely a shortcut to the URL that opens in the normal Chrome browser. It actually opens as a featureless, app window with just TiddlyWiki running in it as if it was a standalone app. And
Indeed,
this
this is
happens
a
for free.
capability
This
that Eric
happens for
has
free.
shown us. Yeah, Eric's shown us it on Android, and it's something I've done on iOS as well. It's not without its problems. It's not what we're talking about at the moment, but it's not without its problems. For instance, on iOS, those home screen applications don't get access to local storage, and I think IndexedDB. There used to be a restriction on iOS that they use the bad JavaScript engine as well. So it's one of those areas that come up from time to time where we're slightly, like PDF support, we're slightly held up by the fact that browsers are a bit bonkers and inconsistent. There's lots of arguments about the fact it's actually really surprising that Apple have this feature because it arguably competes with the App Store. Anyway, what Jed has done is address a problem that affects people whether they're running TiddlyWiki from the home screen or in the normal way, which is simply to make it so that the functionality of TiddlyWiki is usable, fully usable, on a narrow screen. So Jed, over to you. I should let you introduce what you've done.
Okay, yeah, actually I made this because touchscreens really don't like me. So I had to make something really, really simple in order to be able to use TiddlyWiki on a touchscreen. But yeah, this is the things that I have been working on for a while. I actually put them together for this. So all of the control interface is pushed onto the sidebars here, and you can change where everything is on that. I think a while ago I showed off the icon menus that I made. This was built on top of that. Unfortunately, the two do not play well together, but you can't use both of them at the same time. I'm working on that part. Anyway, so the menus, the default ones I have anyway, so create new instead of just create new tiddler, because there are multiple things, like a tiddler with no template. You can add more templates here. I don't have any on the little demo site though. And then creating a new menu button, which is a button that you can put on the menus.
Jed, that's very good.
And unfortunately, CSS and me are not getting along at the moment, so the text is not set up properly. But that's one of the other many things I'm trying to work on. And then a new menu, and the new menu is the little mobile menu type things I've made, which is actually what I'm in right now, where when you click on one of the items, it'll bring you to whatever's in that item, and you place the menu, and that can be an arbitrary depth. But I don't think I have any of those on this that I can really show off. And then there's the control panel, which can show up in the same place. And I did make this a theme, so in your themes, it shows up as that, and you can switch between that and any of the other themes that you would like. But yes, and I changed theme tweaks to be specific to this, and moved all the options that didn't make any sense. So one of the things actually that I have found most useful for actually using this is I made little things so you can, I suppose I should actually show that you can move the icons around. It's a simpler version of what was in the icon menu thing. You can't actually turn off any of the menus, they just disappear. But like the advanced search thing here, you can take that, and instead of having it on the left, you can move it to the top right here, so now it's up here. It still opens in the same place because that's the convenient place for mobile devices, but you can just move them around and turn them on and off as you want. But let's see. Oh yeah, and you can't turn off the control panel. I think it was Mons who pointed out that the way I had it before, if you closed all of your tiddlers and turned off all the icons, you were locked out of everything, and there's nothing you could do. So you can't turn off the control panel. But yeah, so with that configuration, I made a little tool where you can create presets where you set up the menus the way that you want, and you can just say that you're going to add the control panel, the control panel menu to. Oh yeah, because I did not actually have the thing that we're hopefully going to talk about later. You actually have to hit make preset and then choose the one you want before you can edit it. But you just add to it. This is all saved in a JSON file, and oh, that's wrong. Yeah, and then once you've done that, you can go to the control panel, and it's under the theme tweaks and it's menu presets, and you can just say apply preset, and it changes everything to what you had there. And that I have actually found to be very useful because, like I said, like you can turn off the top menu and things like that as you need. And touchscreens don't like me, so I need things very simple. But yeah, so there's that. And
can you make your browser window mobile phone width and show us the same things?
Oh yeah, does that? I can't share my whole
through.
screen because I have multiple monitors. Does that?
Can you go as thin as a phone would go? And yeah, brilliant.
So, yeah, you can go really thin like this. The menus, once again.
Do you want to just refresh to the default layout, just so we can see what the default looks like on the phone?
Yeah, so here's this, and the only thing I have to test on is my tablet, so I've been relying on some of the other people in the group to actually show me how this works, or show me if it works on phones or not. But aside from the top menu here getting all squished together, it seems to work relatively well. And everything is very squished, and these have to go into scrollable, but I don't think there is a way to actually solve that problem without changing all things. Oh, and there's nothing I need to fix. But, so yeah, there's stuff, and I have no idea if I've missed anything relevant. But
well, I'd like to try it on my phone. I'm gonna go and run and get a cable, then I can screen share it onto into the Hangout, and I think it'd be quite interesting. So I'll just leave you for 10 seconds. I can get the cable.
And I'm going to see if I can find.
This is usually the time when I would be playing guitar, the strumming along sort of moment. But yeah, I like what I'm seeing there. A lot of work on making the configuration as easy as the interface itself. Because sort of you could have left it as just sort of bits and pieces, saying, well, what you need to do is tag this and then change the list in the entry in the field there. But you created an interface to do all of that, and that's quite nice.
Touchscreens hate me. Wait. Oh, I guess you probably can't see this new window because it's a new window.
Your microphone's a bit muffled, so it's hard to make out what you're saying. If you could move it a little closer to your mic.
Is that any better? I don't know.
A little better.
Okay. But yeah, the menus that I'm using, I think I might have shown these off before, but that was not what I was thinking about doing. And did Jeremy just get back? Check.
And I can now show you what this looks like on my phone. Let me undo that. If I full screen it. And annoyingly, I can move that to the side. Okay, but I think you're seeing live what's on my phone. So this is an iPhone. When you scroll, you can see how the toolbar at the top up there kind of automatically scrolls out of the way. You get quite a good full screen experience. If I turn the phone on its side, they have this fabulous full screen where there's, again, that thing's rather in the way, but where there's no toolbars or anything involved until I scroll to the top. So let's try the control panel. Looks good to me. And your new Tiddler thing. Let's try it on vertical. Yes, I mean, I think these are the same problems that I get on a native TiddlyWiki on the phone. You know, it's not a. There's still some formatting that could be improved.
Yeah, I think that like the large text for like the plugin stuff, that I think is because of how I did the pop-up, and I've been trying to figure out how to get CSS to work nicely with this.
It also looks like these two toolbar buttons here, the plus and the cog, are the old TiddlyWiki icons from sort of 5.1 point something.
They might be. I'm pretty sure I'm using Font Awesome for the icons that aren't built in. I'm not sure.
I think that you can. Where's the title? Oh, of course we don't get to see the title of the control panel. Anyway, I think that's exactly what we need. Is a decent. How's it on the screen share? Oh, then turn the camera back on. Exactly what we need is these kinds of improvements. Pop-ups, a static toolbar at the top. I'm not planning it for 5.1.9, but I think it's something I mentioned before, more built-in core options for sticking toolbars to different sides of the screen, being able to choose whether the toolbar stretches automatically or whether it's fixed width, those kinds of things. Very much on my list. In the meantime, so I'd like to get to the point where basically everything that Jed has shown us could be done by configuring the default theme without anybody writing wiki text. And obviously, in order to do that, a lot of what's needed is the work that Jed's already done to make those, to give those customizations a user interface. But very cool. Really pleased to see that.
Can I ask? Many on my Android, it's typically that you don't see any menus when you go to various pages. I don't know if it's a browser thing or a page thing or whatever it is, but you see it when you kind of scroll out to either to the top or when you drag side swipe things. Then the menus show up, so they're not really there to take up any real estate to begin with, giving maximum real estate for the actual content instead. Is that something that we can use, or is it?
So there's one particular technique that you often see, which is things appearing or disappearing according to the scroll position. That's something that we don't do at the moment because it's quite slow. So we would. There is. Well, I'm not really explaining it very well, but I think there is a way that we could do that kind of thing. But it would require a kind of new subsystem within TiddlyWiki. But that's not quite what you meant, though, is it, Matt? Sorry.
I don't know exactly what it is. I mean, I can talk just from a user point. But for instance, I use the let's see, what's it called? The newsreader service Feedly, I think it's called.
Yeah.
And there you have. Well, yeah, I think you're familiar.
Are you talking about the web interface of Feedly, by any chance?
Yes,
because...
the web interface, but on cell phones.
Okay.
I lost connection or something. Hello?
I'm not screen sharing, but I will be. And I must go in a couple of minutes, actually, so this is the last thing we'll do. But here is here's my login of Feedly. And in fact, I can't resize it enough to flick into a mobile layout. But basically, to answer more directly, anything that we've ever seen done in HTML and JavaScript and CSS is doable in TiddlyWiki, by hook or by crook. And the degree to which it's, one of the things I was going to say earlier about plugins and particularly some of the techniques that I think Eric showed us actually, is that it's quite nice that you can sort of play fast and loose with plugins. You know, you can make things that don't necessarily work they don't have to work for everybody all of the time in the way that the core does. And in that spirit, it's quite easy to get some arbitrary chunk of JavaScript that you see up and running. I mean, it's not for the faint-hearted, and it requires some JavaScript experience to integrate JavaScript, but it doesn't always require massive amounts of re-engineering. But I think we do need to identify the primitives that we want to pull into the core so that they're native to TiddlyWiki. So I think most of what I see in Jed's work is actually it's not quite the word, but just highly configurable pop-ups, you know, drop downs, whatever you want to call them. And I'm not the kinds of hover menus and so on that that one sees that are a bit more sort of fluid. They have more JavaScript and CSS sugar on them, but there's nothing to stop us doing that. Anyway, guys, I think my slightly incoherent answer to that question indicates it's probably about time that we drew a close to today's proceedings. As we close, as I normally do, I need to thank all of you very much for coming along, and I think there's a couple of people who've dropped off. I'm glad that, Eric, we did stick to my prediction and managed to keep you awake for 2 hours, 20 minutes. So I hope you'll have a well-earned, yes, lots of coffee. And I hope now you'll have a well-earned dream of TiddlyWiki and wake up and write lots of amazing plugins for us all. Congratulations to Pascal. Must be, well, Pascal, next time you come, you must show stuff, because I'm realizing that both Andreas, Eric, Jed and Matt have all been able to show us very exciting new stuff. Very pleased with that. Very pleased again as I reflect how much TiddlyWiki has become a community project, and how much of the interesting stuff that's going on is no longer in the core, but you know, in developments like we've seen today. So, and in terms of your time today, as I say, it would be, I'd probably still do this Hangout if I was on my own, alone in the room, but it's way more interesting with other people. I can't thank you enough for your time and attention. And it's these kinds of interactions that really help me understand and appreciate TiddlyWiki in a way that hopefully helps me to do a good job of looking after it for all of you. So thank you very much. Today we're going to end slightly differently than usually. We are going to do our normal waving goodbye, and then I'm actually going to leave the Hangout, and Jed and Matt are going to continue a discussion about some coding issues. So we're kind of moving to a workshop. That means what I hope is going to happen in 2 hours' time, I'll look at my phone and find that the Hangout is still going strong, and then back to something Eric said right at the beginning, it will end up being one of those 12-hour marathon Hangouts. So if you are still going in 2 hours, maybe I'll see you then. Otherwise, guys, goodbye, and thank you very much, and I will not press the stop broadcast button. Cheers, guys. Bye-bye. Actually, before I go, I should say to you guys, you should be able to see a red stop broadcast button underneath the avatars of the individuals. Can you?
I do not see any button.
Aha. That's interesting. So it may be that I need.
Because you are the one who initiated the Hangout, thus.
Yeah, so I think maybe only I can stop the broadcast. So that suggests that I might need to stay logged in. I wonder.
Can you actually transfer that to someone else? Is there a possibility?
Yeah, I don't see any sort of.
Maybe once you leave, it goes to somebody else.
Really?
Oh.
If you leave it live when you leave, does it stop recording?
Well, I will stop recording before I leave. But you're right. So guys, I'm going to close my browser window, and then, well, I don't. I won't be able to see whether you've been able to carry on or not. but you'll be able to tell me. And then I guess, yeah, we'll see what happens, really. And maybe
close your browser window and then come back again and see what happened. Because
wait. Before you do, maybe we lose each other if you do that. You know, maybe no one is connected to anyone. Then.
I'll tell you what. Look, for the next 40 minutes or something, I'm just going to put my microphone on mute,
hang on a second.
my camera on mute, and leave you to it.
Jeremy has left the room before after stopping broadcasting and it was fine. We were able to continue. So I don't think we'll get disconnected if he leaves. The question is, what does it do about the recording, since no one else would be in control of it?
I think it's fine. For the next 40 minutes or so, I'm going to leave it with the camera off and the microphone off. I'm in another room, and you guys carry on, and then I'll maybe pop back in at that point and see what's going on. Okay.
Well, I'm actually going to go because it's long past my time to go to sleep. So, good morning, good night, be well, be happy. See you in the future when we'll all be hovering and
I'll see you soon, Eric. Cheers, guys. So
well.
I'm just muting and leaving you to it. Cheers. See you later.
Bye.
Yep. Bye.
Okay.
So the ones are still here. I should, Jed, particularly then, in about 40 minutes I will have to go too, unfortunately. But maybe all of us are here to discuss many various other things. Yeah. Are you there, Jed?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah.
So,
or first, I should start with it. Do you have time with this now? Because we're already past 5 and everything. So for this.
Today I was just going to start working on a bunch of my projects anyway, and this is going to be useful for stuff I do. So why not?
Oh, perfect. So I don't know. We don't have any host anymore. So, a bit. Yeah, do you have any, I'll leave. Hey, go ahead, shoot.
Okay, so yes, this is just a little bit that I threw in based on your little to-do list at various times during the Hangout. So I just made the buttons the same as the buttons on the toolbar, and I use the export button for your, I don't remember what you would call it, the show button, where it just opens up the actual tiddler.
Oh wait, that's the new tiddler under there?
Yeah, that's.
It's amazing to see, and it's at the same time depressing, because these are things that I try and there was just no way I can make this work, and then you've already done it before we even start the discussion here. That's incredible, fantastic.
Well, there's that. There is one part that I have no idea how to do. So, and then there's the attachment button, which deletes the tiddler that you're working on. It doesn't clear this, so we might need to do some custom things for that.
Mm-hmm.
But,
that bit might actually also be related to another thing that I think I wrote up there, that if you exit the whole thing and then reopen it, it should be blank again. That's at least my opinion. So that may be a similar feature there to when you delete the tiddler and when you exit and enter the feature again. It should clear the fields, I guess. Or what do you say? What's your opinion?
Yeah, I think that, considering that it's supposed to be here for quick input, I think that would be actually a pretty important thing. So every time it's open, you can start. So the freeze is what you called it. I put a little lock thing here.
Yeah.
But the problem is it will, do this, and there are two problems with this. One is, as you edit the title, new tiddlers get created immediately.
Yes.
which is something I was anticipating. The thing I wasn't anticipating, though, is when you unlock
wait. It's when it's created immediately as opposed to when you don't have to click any field for it to be created. Is that what you're saying?
Well, at every key press, a new tiddler is created. So if you're
Okay. Okay.
so here is a new tiddler creates.
Oh my goodness. That will make for a big TiddlyWiki in the end. Yeah.
Yeah, I've run into this before, and I don't actually have a solution for it other than having 2 buttons. The other problem is that when you unlock it, I have not found a way to actually store your new title to switch to editing that tiddler instead of the original tiddler, which that is as far as I have gotten. So.
Okay. Hey, fantastic. I mean, and you did this during the Hangout. That's amazing. Wow. Wow.
Well, this does have some very close similarities to some other stuff I've been doing over the past few days, so I did have a bit of an advantage there. I also changed how your code is laid out so I can read it well, but let's see. I guess there's no easy way for me to just pass this to you, is there?
Maybe the easiest thing is to put up a new tiddly spot, or let's see, it's just a few, or maybe you added a few tiddlers.
Well, here, I can do this. I can go, since I do have a wiki that is up online anyway. Progress. Here. Oh. Okay. Yes, I don't have your little icon in the page menu, but if you go here, I'll paste this into the chat. So as soon as it finishes saving, you should be able to see what I have.
And this is what is your address there?
Oh, just posting the sidebar there. It's in my socks.tiddlyspot.com, and then FastNewTiddler test is called. And the table of contents is not a work in progress.
Let's see, in my socks at tiddlyspot.com, that's the domain, right? So if I just go there, I have it in my history here. So.
And then in the you can get to in the table of contents under work in progress if you want to go that way. Let's see. Well,
work in progress. Let's see. I'm switching between screens here. So what did you say? Work in progress. Where did I find that?
The table of contents on the right. Here, table of contents down on the right. It should be like the second from the bottom, and then underneath that, FastNewTiddler test.
Work in progress. Yes. So, FastNewTiddler test. Yeah. And all the code is in that very tiddler, or?
Yes, this is the only one that I have changed. So,
someone is knocking at the door. I just have to open that. Okay. Just this. Okay. Hold on a second. I just have to run.
Place. Okay. I don't think we can make the default text. So if there's something to it, no, we can fix. I know how to fix that. Title.
I'm back. You hear me, Jed?
Yeah.
Yeah. So my question was all the code in that tiddler?
All the code except for the code for or whatever it is that you made your icon with. It's in the page toolbar.
Oh yeah,
So
but okay, all the code that I need.
Yeah,
I
yes.
mean, all the things you've done. So to say. Okay, fantastic. Let's see. So I will just.
If you just import that into your test wiki or wherever you're developing, then that should give you. What is this again? H2. Oops, sorry.
There. Now I have it installed here. That's fantastic. Yeah, that's incredible. So, but in my to-do list, so to say, do you think it makes sense, or is there something that you think is just, that's a bad idea, or something, or?
No, it all actually looks like it is very good overview of what should be done.
That's true.
I am not sure how exactly to do a lot of things, but I suppose that's
No. Hey, one step at a time. Yeah, as is stated there also, the idea with a slider type thingy from the top down. I was inspired partly by a site. Let's see, what's it called? It was a thing. There was a small, a small tab just sticking down from the top, and when you click the tab, it grew out into like a longer panel, like a longer top menu thing with the contents. So that was like the original thought, to have like a small thing that doesn't take up any real estate, and then when you click it, it opens up so to make room for the bigger thing. It reminds me a lot of your various pop-ups. Is that something you think is possible, or?
Yeah, well, the thing that I'm showing right now, I mean, I could take this and pretty much copy and paste it so that instead of having the menu here, it has the edit tiddler thing, and then move this button to wherever we think is appropriate and change it to whatever is appropriate.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Oh, could that be made then to push down the contents that you do see in the story, the other contents mainly the Story River, I guess, but so that it doesn't cover, because I think that otherwise, if you do click the what did I call it? The center tool in the toolbar, the done or show. What did I call it? I forgot. If you click that, then it would end up under the below, or I mean under. So it would be exactly like that. Now it's now the top tiddler is hidden by the side. So maybe it's not like a slider sliding on. Maybe it's not a pop-up actually. Maybe it's a push down.
Yes, we should be able to do that. I think actually that could actually be a bit simpler. I mean, look at the code and how I did this, because that's the sort of thing I forget immediately.
The very neatest thing would be if it was only took up real estate in the Tiddler River area. So we pushed down the Tiddler River only.
Yes, that's actually. Oh,
Just for your information, your microphone is switching on and off in some kind of muted, half muted way. So in case you say something and I don't answer, just repeat it. Just
okay, yeah, my computer is probably keeping a lot of background noise, so might be.
Yeah, silencing it.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, the buttons here are probably not at all what we want to use, but just something like that, and
yeah, exactly.
and then we can
so
put.
Is that like is that using the like tags above river thing, or is it something else?
No, that is actually just a reveal widget. Let's see here, or well, maybe we can. Oh, I didn't put it here. No, let's see. Yeah. I can. Oh, wrong window. Yeah, for this I just put a reveal widget around it. So the tiddler is always here. It's just that what the tiddler shows is either just these buttons or these buttons and the rest of the content. So
and the but those buttons that you're pointing to now, they could be part of like a top menu thing, so that they don't scroll off screen.
Yeah, they could be anything. They could be anywhere. So at the moment, this is always going to be at the top of the Tiddler River. So you need to scroll up to the top in order to access it. And we should be able to make it so that when you hit one of them, it will automatically scroll to wherever this is. But I don't know if it would be best to have this always at the top or to have this appear wherever you are. At the top, I know how to do. Wherever you are, I don't know. But
yeah,
to make that happen. there.
What would be nice, I think, is that if it was part of a static top menu, but when it's opened, when it's triggered, it stays floating, or it's in front of the Tiddler river, but it also in the background made space for it, so that if you scroll to the top, let's see now, because what you want is to, when you click the I forgot what the name I used for it, the done or preview or whatever. 1 second. The show, yes. When you click show, it would be nice if it would be nice if the user could see the things, regardless where he was originally standing in the river when he triggered the whole feed take place. I assume that the show thing makes the tiddler show up at top of the river. In other words, it would mean one would also have to auto scroll to the top. But if the FastNewTiddler feature is laying in front of everything, that would mean that the just shown the tiddler that we're just showing, then that would be covered by the FastNewTiddler feature. So ideally, the tiddler river would be pushed down by a certain amount of pixels or centimeters.
Oh, okay. So like
Does that make sense?
It wouldn't scroll anything. It's just that the top part of whatever your view is would change.
It would scroll if you were further down. If you say you're half down the river, and you well, okay. First of all, I'll take it from the beginning. You can toggle on or off the slider on or off, or I should say out or in, perhaps. So you toggle it, and then you see the FastNewTiddler feature, the template. And that slides down from like the top menu. Does that make sense so far?
Yeah.
Yeah. But if you are scroll down on the page and trigger it, then it also slides open, but I assume the result is that it then covers part of the tiddlers in the river, correct? I mean, as a pop-out, just like any pop-up.
Rated here, yes, it covers.
It covers, yeah, exactly like that. Yeah, there, exactly. But now, you can leave that open there. Yes, but now if there is the show button, if you click the show button, what would happen then is that the new tiddler shows up in the river, right? But it shows up at the top, or where does it show up actually?
Oh, that I am not actually sure. Wherever the default thing is, I suppose. Let's see. So underneath, yeah. So at the top of the river, which is underneath this, because this isn't actually part of the story river.
Yes, exactly. So what would happen then if we scroll down the page a bit again, and just for my explanation, yeah, and now you open the slider thingy that you had the top menu. Yeah, no.
Well, for this one, this does not. I don't have the. I don't have the creator.
Yeah, that one. Yeah, we're just pretending right now that it's the. But and what happened to the scroll? Is it possible to be half way down the page and have this slider thingy open? Yeah, exactly. Now, imagine if this was the FastNewTiddler feature thing, that the slider thing contained the FastNewTiddler. If we now, in this state, click the show button there, what would happen? Well, it would happen that I am hoping that this would happen, that we scroll up, the Tiddler river scrolls up to top, but that would still not show all of the just created Tiddler, right? Because it's still covered by the slider. So what would have to take place is that the river is pushed down that amount of space. Does that make sense, or is it?
Yes, actually, yeah, I hadn't been thinking about that, but this is a problem that I have spoken to some other people about, and I don't think anybody has found a good solution to it yet. Actually, Tobias had found some, well, had found a solution
Okay,
that apparently
the
did not.
42, the number 42 something, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Okay. So it's that problem. Okay, I know that is a problem. But
So we could,
no, wait. Is it really the same problem?
well, what we would need to do is to have the tiddler that it scrolls to automatically have the top of that tiddler, around here. So have it
Yeah,
scroll through
exactly.
here instead of all the way up to the top.
Exactly.
We can set things so that they scroll through here, but when you open a new tiddler, even if you tell it to do that, because of some of the other internal workings of TiddlyWiki, after it scrolls here, it will scroll to the top. So I didn't really
So
understand
here,
Jeremy's,
maybe
but that's
Jeremy's
what happened.
reasoning for but here's a thought then. Maybe a temporary dummy tiddler could be inserted at the top of the river. Always when we click show, there is an additional dummy tiddler inserted at top with just just to create some space to push down the actual top tiddler.
That is actually a really good solution.
Yeah.
Yeah, like if we just use like the top of river or whatever it is, the above story river, and then we could just make an empty tiddler that we put a div that has a set height that is the same as whatever the pop out is.
Yeah.
That actually should do exactly what we need, and I really should write that down because that will also solve some of the problems that I've been working on. Okay. So yes, that is a great idea, and
Okay. It could be CSS to show transparency only also, so that it doesn't actually. I mean, if someone was to actually be able to look at it, I mean, behind this FastNewTiddler slider, then they wouldn't see anything. It would just look, like background because it's totally invisible. Maybe.
yes, it would. You'd just make a
Just a
tiddler, and
thought.
inside the
That's not.
tiddler, all you would have is a div, and the div would have a height of some number of pixels that's equal to the height of your editor thing, and
Yeah.
that should give you the same. It should look like the normal background of the TiddlyWiki, whatever you have that set to.
Yeah. Glad I could contribute something to you. So I will take a look at the to-do list in there. Or do you think that you could actually take a look at the to-do list and just read through it loudly and give your comments on what's possible, what's not good, is that possible?
Yeah, give me just a second.
Of course, of course. Interesting to see how you work here. It's a peek into the real stuff for a non-developer.
Oh yeah, I guess I didn't actually get to show this off. I'm going to show this off for just a few seconds. But yeah, I made this the other day for a new task list thing that I have, and it is just a normal list. Each one of these is a tiddler that's tagged appropriately. You can make new tasks here. You can look at this by going to the In My Sock site.
Yeah,
But
I'll do
it
that.
has selectively expandable categories, and it has categories and subcategories and subcategories and stuff. So
Nice.
yeah, that's all. I'm quite proud of that.
Cool. Cool.
Okay,
Really
let's
cool.
see. To-do list. All right. Well, the icons that, aside from the freeze part, the dustbin,
Yeah.
I have that. The show has that. Closing does it. For the freeze part, this is almost certainly possible. The problem is that when you freeze it, like I have a little icon here, and with this you can change the title. What the icon does is it changes this from editing that little temporary state that you have, whatever you called it in your temporary tiddler, changes it to actually editing the title of the tiddler whose text and everything you're editing. And that works just fine, but like that, yeah. But when you change the text of your original tiddler, it brings you back to here. And sorry, you better be quiet. And then if you do that and then change this and change it back, it also brings you back to here. The reason for that is when you lock it, I have it set whatever this title is and put that into a temporary state tiddler. And my idea was that then you change this title, and when you unlock this, it'll change everything to the way you need it to be. And I just realized that that is anyway, I have it editing the actual title, and then what it's supposed to do is when you unlock it, it sets the state for what tiddler you're editing here for the text and tags and everything to that new title. And I did it in a way that I shouldn't do it. And what it should be doing is that when you lock it, it has you editing a new state tiddler that has the same stuff as your original one. And then when you unlock it, it writes the title and that state tiddler. So, okay, you can do that. And I'm sorry, that was probably a jumble of me babbling that didn't make any sense. But, okay, I'll get to that in a second. It is possible. Let's see, Jeremy was talking about this part, and that can be solved by a reveal.
But it seems you've solved that already.
It might be. See. Okay, we exit and reopen part.
I just got a JavaScript error or something.
I also changed the box a little bit, but that's because one of the things I added shift away from the Alright, okay, yes, to do that part in the
you're right,
button
the above store is the other thing.
You better be quiet. Sorry. Yeah, to clear everything in the button that you have to the remove tag one for exiting them, you would just add a few action widgets to it. Action. What is it? And then set each of the fields to be blank. There's new title. There's tags and.
I don't see any. Your screen sharing is only showing like a static page, right?
Oh yeah. Sorry, I have two monitors, so sharing the entire thing.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, you don't, you don't have to adapt it to mine.
Oh, so here. Yeah.
Okay, I don't understand this anyway. So.
Well, I will copy this into the browser in a second. But all I'm doing is I'm adding an action widget. This is the same code as in your Tiddler. I'm just using Sublime Text for it. But
Okay.
this is the button that you have to remove the editor from the top of the
Yeah, the field mangler
river.
thingy.
So all I'm doing is putting an action set field widget into it that you have your temp FastNewTiddler, which holds all of your current editing state. And I am just adding to that button the action widget that sets those fields to be empty, and I think it just text it. Oh, I guess the text part I don't need. Or, oh, okay, yeah, I should have moved the title in. Let's see.
Just a note here. Actually, I have to go in a second, but a note regarding the unlock icon. I was considering that icon actually, but the thing is, because it's used, for encryption and non-encryption, I decided against it. So just want to mention that the arrows that I put in the to-do list, you see those double arrow thingy types, they are just, they are not icons, they're just characters. UTF-8 or what's it called, not ASCII, but they're just characters, so they can easily be used, I figured. There's nothing to import or anything.
Okay, yeah.
Just mentioning it. Yeah, exactly those. They're just characters. You'll see if in the edit mode, you'll see they're not images.
That probably would be
yeah, just wanted to mention that. Of course, they don't show though any state difference between, like, you have two padlocks, one locked and one unlocked. Those characters. Actually, maybe I can find the character. Whatever. Just wanted to mention it.
Also, when.
Yes, exactly. That's a detail. Jed, I'm sorry, but I have to go. I really wish I didn't have to. Trust me. This is fantastic. What you're doing here. This fantastic. Thank you so much for helping out. I think it seems to be a thing that is appreciated, and there seem to be other people agreeing that it would be good to be able to make Tiddler safe. So it's an important job.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I think
yeah. So, Jed, and if anyone else happens to be listening, Pascal, and who knows, Jeremy may be having a sneak listening somewhere in the background. Bye, guys, and thank you so much. Okay, talk to you later, Jed. Bye. Thanks.
Okay, well, I'm going to be poking this a bit. I guess I'm alone, so you're going to hear me muttering and typing if anybody actually is watching. So enjoy, I suppose. Nobody is watching. You also get to hear my dog Jed protecting the house from whatever shadows happen to be outside. So I'm sure it will be fascinating. I should send it to you. There. Step. See how the question is really good. And now that Matt's not here, I have a question. Um, oh, yeah, I need to add that too. That's good. Oh, like this. Spell it out. Oh, lock in. I have a solution. Two versions navigate. No, we can see we're using Sublime. Good. We go. If it is locked, then we do that. Yeah, it's not locked. It's locked. Now we are locked down here. We're not locked. I want what we have here. Anything else? This could solve. Yeah. that is not equal, but you should be safe. Oh, okay, I think I got oh, that's fine. I have to change the killers. No, I'm not getting this. Use then we need to set the field under the table. So action set field is here has the current insert anything that title gets set to there's a new title which has not been changed yet to the type title, but insert. If we change then look for sets field type title. That should work. So, so let's change the title. Go. Change it to this. Tiddler edited. Change the page title. New title, and then delete Tiddler with new title. Can stop time marks, just field that we should make it so Let's do that. Let's see. It's not this. Oh, yeah. That's probably. The type title and the title happens to be this thing. Now we look at this. This here. That didn't work. And I will change that. Come to the title like this. Temp. Right. I might have to watch this thing and see how really it is to really complain about this stuff. Okay. Then we can do that here. Arrows thing. So. Apparently today's free comic book day. So, Store. It's actually a thing with it. Store. Probably look at something actually change it. Some tiddler can edit this. This. JSON. This. Okay, well, okay, now we're in the position of anything else here? Oops. Stuff. Hints. Should probably do some notes to show you. Otherwise, this is.
Yeah.
Yes?
It seems like
Oh,
I am the only one present online currently.
I did not know anybody was here. I hope my grumbling has at least been entertaining.
I'm having a hard time actually understanding what you said.
Well, none of it is important, I assure you.
So you're just mumbling while working on your tiddlers?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I just had to pop out because I wanted to take advantage of the rain having stopped for a minute or for a while, so it allowed me to go downtown and proceed to a few purchases. Do you mind telling me exactly what you're working on? The FastNewTiddler.
Yes, this is what we were talking about earlier. Matthias had asked me to help a bit with this, and we were hoping to do it during the main bulk of the Hangout, but I said that I would stick around after, and Jeremy's the only one who can actually stop the live recording of the Hangout. So yeah. I figured instead of having it just empty, I could at least have people listen to my barely audible grumbling and stuff. So yeah, Matthias unfortunately had to run. He was here until a few minutes ago. But what we're trying to do is, have you seen on the group what this does? I can explain that. I don't think it ever was clearly explained during the Hangout.
Basically, what whoever created that particular tiddler was interested in creating a tiddler fast, so as to avoid having the draft step and everything. The only concern he had was that anytime he created a tiddler via that process, he could not understand why automatically was added a particular tag to his empty tiddler. Other than that, it seemed to me that the work was pretty much done. So if you could actually, if you care to actually tell me what you're currently working on, are you trying to get rid of that tag automatically added? Or not?
Well, that part we found out why that is happening, and there are a few ways around it, and the way that I think this is going to go, it's not going to be needed. But all I'm trying to do now is have a good way for it to pop in the editor to pop up, because he wanted it to be available everywhere, but the way that he had it, there were some problems with it popping up on top of any content in the TiddlyWiki, because like right now it's okay, maybe it's not. It was supposed to be. It would always be at the top and never blocking whatever was underneath it.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things that we added was you can click on this, which we should probably change, and it opens up this tiddler in the normal story river. The problem is that, as you can see, that tiddler is directly underneath the editor here, and we wanted a way to fix that. And Matthias, I think, possibly by accident, came up with the wonderful idea of having an empty tiddler that had nothing but a blank div in it, and put that at the top of the story river using the tag that he was using, the above story tag, and hopefully that will push down the top of the story river low enough that when you open up the new tiddler, it will show up down here instead of right behind here, and that blank tiddler can be toggled using the same button that makes this pop up. So I haven't actually tried doing that yet, but it seems like something that could work. Other than that, it's just the interface that he would like to work on, and I think just having it pop up when you hit a button like this is what he wanted. Also, I made it so you can actually edit the title without having problems with a million tiddlers popping into existence every time you hit a key on the keyboard. But yeah, it's pretty much to the point of cleaning up the interface and making sure there aren't little annoying things that will show up. Yeah. Also, I had never thought of using Unicode for icons, but Unicode icons.
Hi guys. I've come back briefly. I was going to suggest actually stopping the broadcast at this point, but of course you can definitely continue to talk at that point, but it wouldn't be recorded. It was a good question.
But the whole video
on for. Say again?
But the video will be available. The whole video will be available anyway.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
Including the bit that we're talking about now. So I'm going to press stop broadcast and I'll see you on the other side. Hang on a second. But cheers, everybody. Bye.